order. We'll now begin the daily routine with presenting and reading of petitions. Presenting reports of committees. Tabling reports, regulations, and other papers. Statements by ministers. Government notices of motion. I recognize the Honourable Minister for Health and Wellness.
Speaker, I beg leave to make an introduction.
Yes, please do.
Thank you, Speaker. With us today in the gallery, your gallery, is Dr. the Honourable Ronald Stewart.
Welcome. It is such an honor to have you here with us today. I recognize, I recognize the Honourable Minister for Health and Wellness continuing her introductions.
We're so excited to see you, Dr. Stewart. We didn't finish. So Dr. Stewart, as many of us will know, has had a long and groundbreaking career in medicine, primarily, but also in politics. Dr. Stewart chose to specialize in emergency medicine at a time when the education wasn't available in Canada, so he had to travel to the United States before returning home to practice. Originally from Sydney Mines, he began his practice in Neils Harbor, right, before he traveled to the United States to work. He's also a strong supporter of the Dalhousie Medical Research Foundation, contributing financially and working to inspire the next generation of health professionals. His 50-plus year commitment to medicine, his many and varied contributions, and his dedicated leadership has earned him one of our country's highest honours, a promotion to the Companion of the Order of Canada, which we celebrated last week at the Lieutenant Governor. So, Dr. Stewart, I just want to assure you that words cannot express our gratitude or our pride in you for all that you've contributed to medicine, emergency medicine, and to our province. Welcome. Hear, hear.
I recognize the Honourable Minister of Health and Wellness.
Madam Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas only 500 Canadians have been promoted to the level of Companion of the Order of Canada, the most senior level of the Order, and only 6 of them have been Nova Scotians until Dr. the Honourable Ron Stewart became the 7th. And whereas Dr. Stewart was the first medical director in the Los Angeles Paramedic Program, a founding member of the Emergency Medicine Department at the University of Pittsburgh, a key advisor on the 1970s television series Emergency, and a trusted advisor to political and policy leaders. And whereas Dr. the Honourable Ronald Stewart was a transformative Minister of Health in Nova Scotia, whose ambitious and tenacious work resulted in the formation of emergency health services. Therefore, be it resolved that all members of this House recognize Dr. Stewart's 50 years of selfless, groundbreaking work and offer him our most sincere congratulations on his promotion to Companion of the Order of Canada. Speaker, I ask for a waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? Agreed. The motion is carried. I recognize the Honourable Minister for Agriculture.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Could I request a moment of silence at the end of my notice of motion?
Yes, of course.
Thank you. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the late Honourable Derek Bragg, who was a fellow Atlantic Canadian Minister of Agriculture in Newfoundland and Labrador until he stepped away from the portfolio in June due to health concerns, sadly passed away this past January. And whereas for 3 decades, Minister Bragg was town clerk and manager of his hometown of Greenspond and fire chief for 28 years before he served his province as minister in several departments over his time in government, which began when first elected as MHA in Fogo Island, Cape Friels in 2015. And whereas he is remembered by his family as a devoted husband, father, and grandfather, by his province as a minister providing great counsel to his premier, by his constituents, as a politician with a straight-shooting style and prominent sense of humor, and by me as a fellow Minister of Agriculture who I respected and was lucky to have known and learned from, Derek Bragg put everyone he met on the path to good fortune simply by knowing him. Therefore, be it resolved that all members of this House join me in remembering the Honourable Derek Bragg's contributions to supporting agriculture in our region and his devotion to public service in general. Madam Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed?
Agreed.
The motion is carried. We'll stand now for a moment of silence, please. Are there any further government notices of motion? Introduction of bills. I recognize the honourable member for Cumberland North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I beg leave to table an act to reintroduce local school boards. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Cumberland North begs leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Reintroduce Local School Boards.
Bill 443, an act to reintroduce local school boards.
Order that the bill be read a second time on a future date. I recognize the honourable member for Annapolis.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I beg leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Provide Volunteer Firefighters with Medical First Responder Training. Thank you.
The honourable member for Annapolis begs leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Provide Volunteer Firefighters with Medical First Responder Training.
Bill 444, an act to provide volunteer firefighters with medical first responder training.
Order that the bill be read a second time on a future day. I recognize the honourable member for Halifax, Citadel, Sable Island.
Madam Speaker, I beg leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Establish a Provincial Lake Advisory Commission.
The honourable member for Halifax, Citadel, Sable Island begs leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Establish a Provincial Lake Advisory Commission.
Bill 445, an act to establish a provincial lake advisory commission.
Ordered that the bill be read a second time on a future day. I recognize the honourable member for Cumberland North.
Madam Speaker, I beg leave to table a bill entitled An Act Respecting the Community Use of Public School Facilities.
The honourable member for Cumberland North begs leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act Respecting the Community Use of Public School Facilities.
Bill 446, an act respecting the community use of public school facilities.
Any further introduction of bills? I recognize the honourable member for Halifax Citadel Sable Island.
Madam Speaker, I beg leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 1 of the Acts of 1994-1995, the Environment Act.
The honourable member for Halifax Citadel Sable Island begs leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 1 of the Acts of 1994-95, the Environment Act.
Bill 447, an act to amend Chapter 1 of the Acts of 1994-95, the Environment Act.
Order that the bill be read a second time on a future day. I recognize the honourable member for Cumberland North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I beg leave to table a bill entitled An Act to Amend Schedule A of Chapter 1 of the Acts of 2018, the Education Act, respecting school weather closings. Thank you.
The honourable member for Cumberland North begs leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Amend Schedule A of Chapter 1 of the Acts of 2018, the Education Act, respecting school weather closings.
Bill 448, an act to amend Schedule A of Chapter 1 of the Acts of 2018, the Education Act, respecting school weather closings.
Order that the bill be read a second time on a future day. Notices of motion. Statements by members. I recognize the honourable member for Preston.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, before I begin, I beg leave to make an introduction.
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. In your gallery, the Speaker's gallery, I'm honored to introduce Rayshawn Jaden Brooks, an outstanding athlete at Woodlawn High School. Joining Jaden is his mother, Lachelle, brother Dante. As well, I am incredibly pleased to introduce Jaden's grandmother and the constituency assistant in my office, Catherine Brooks. Jaden, Lachelle, Dante, and Catherine, I would ask you to rise and accept the warm welcome in the legislature.
Welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here with us today. I recognize the honourable member for Preston.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to recognize and congratulate Rayshawn Jaden Brooks. Jaden is a grade 12 student at Woodlawn High School in Dartmouth. He has been active in sports starting at the young age of 9, playing basketball in various basketball leagues throughout the HRM. Jaden only started playing football in grade 10, and this became the sport that he excelled at and loved. In grade 11, he was awarded the 2022 Most Improved Player. And in 2023, he received the Most Valuable Player Award for the Woodlawn High Panthers. Jaden accomplished these awards while also working part-time. Jaden is actively now completing applications to various universities to allow him to continue his education and play the sport he loves. I ask all members of the Nova Scotia Legislature to join with me to congratulate Rayshawn Jaden Brooks and wish him well as he continues to do great things. Keep moving forward, Jaden. You got this. Thank you, Madam.
I recognize the honourable member for Bedford South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today I just want to rise and recognize a new business in my riding of Bedford South, actually right on the boundary between myself and my colleague here, Hammonds Lanes Lucasville. Jukai Japanese and Thai opened in January. Had a chance to go in a couple weeks ago, visit with the chef there, Sen, and the team. Amazing food. It's one of the great things about my constituency is we have food from all over the world, so please come and visit if you like anything under the sun, and certainly Japanese and Thai food at Jukai Japanese and Thai. So just want to wish them well. I know they're doing very, very well. This is their second location, and congratulate them on all their success in Bedford South. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the honourable member for Dartmouth North, sorry.
Madam Speaker, I rise today to pay tribute to Dartmouth North resident Bruce Anderson on the occasion of his retirement after nearly 40 years of service at Bedford Institute of Oceanography. Bruce is a third-generation worker at BIO, working as a multidisciplinary hydrographer. His colleagues describe him as an unfailingly pleasant, welcoming, knowledgeable coworker who has been silently responsible for so much of what is great about working at their office. He organizes monthly coffees, open houses, retirement parties, pizza parties, a giant Christmas potluck. He tracks people's birthdays and special events and provides onboarding to every new employee. And he does it all with good grace and humility. I know his co-workers are sad to see him leave, but I also know they will wish him a very happy retirement. Madam Speaker, I ask the whole House to join me in wishing Bruce Anderson a very happy retirement and wish him all the best in the hopefully less busy years to come. Thank you.
I recognize the honourable member for Truro, Bible Hill, Millbrook, Salmon River.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Before I begin, I beg leave to make an introduction.
Yes, please go ahead.
In the East Gallery, I'm honored to introduce some young members of the staff at the PC Caucus office. Seamus McLeod, Gary Russell, Adam Morash, Brian Pendleton, Evan Coakley, Claire Butler, and Megan McDaniel. I would ask you all to rise to receive much-deserved applause from the members of this legislature.
Welcome. It's a pleasure to have you with us here today. I recognize the honourable member for Truro, Bible Hill, Millbrook, Salmon River.
Madam Speaker, I'm pleased to rise today to talk about some of the incredible staff who work in our caucus office. When many young people don't often show a lot of interest in government and public service, I'm pleased that so many young people are working in our office. In fact, the majority of our staff are under the age of 30. Seamus McLeod is our Director of Research. Gary Russell and Adam Morash are research officers. Brian Pendleton does both research and communications. And Evan Coakley, Claire Butler, and Megan McDaniel are communication officers. Madam Speaker, I know our members are pleased to be working with these smart and enthusiastic young staff, and we look forward to seeing what they can accomplish in the future. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the honourable member for Halifax-Armdale.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today, I would like to acknowledge the exceptional contribution of Independent Living Nova Scotia. This organization has been a source of hope and support for Nova Scotians with disability, providing vital programs and service that promotes equality and breaks down barriers. This organization has consistently demonstrated an unwavering commitment to advance the rights of persons with disability throughout advocacy and the provision of essential service. Among service offered by this organization included professional development training session, self-advocacy workshop, self-management attendance service, and the registry disability saving pilot project. Madam Speaker, it's with the great pleasure that I express my sincere appreciation to Independent Nova Scotia for their tireless effort to create a more inclusive and accessible society for all. Their work is a testimony to the power of the community action and vital role of civil society in shaping this world that we live. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the honourable member for Halifax Needham.
Madam Speaker, I rise today to recognize Trino Morton. Trino is an accomplished community engagement specialist who understands the power of building inclusive communities. Growing up in Uniacke Square, Trino faced the reality of gentrification head-on. This early life experience motivated him to do the hard work of tackling this pressing social issue and advance economic justice for communities like his own. Trino has a number of academic accolades, a degree in geography and planning, urban planning studies, and global development, to name a few. Trino's compassion for the community is evident in his collaborative work with various community groups, nonprofits, and local governments to help tackle pressing social issues. Trino, as a young person, has a deep passion for creating inclusive communities that work for everyone. I'm extremely proud of Trino Morton and all that he has accomplished thus far, and I'd like all members of this House to help me recognize Trino Morton for his passion for his community.
I recognize the honourable member for Eastern Passage.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I beg leave to make an introduction.
Yes, please go ahead.
I would like to draw everyone's attention to the East Gallery, where in the top row is my favorite person in the political world, my constituency assistant, Lisa Rochon, who is my right and left hand. As well, right next to her, and I'll ask them both to rise, is J.M. Morales, who is a Nova Scotia Community College student in business administration who is working in my office. So I'll ask them both to rise and enjoy the warm welcome of the host.
Welcome. It's a pleasure to see you here today. I recognize the honourable member for Eastern Passage.
Madam Speaker, I rise today to congratulate Evan Coakley for having his paper published in the Dalhousie Political Science Journal, The Podium. Evan's paper, The Impact of International Institutions on Russia's Invasion of Ukraine, Viewed Through a Rational Choice Institutionalist Perspective, was selected as one of only 6 to be published in this peer-reviewed undergraduate academic journal. Evan is a tremendous young man with a keen intellect and a drive for success. Madam Speaker, I ask all members of the Nova Scotia Legislature to join me in congratulating Evan Coakley on this outstanding accomplishment. We know that Evan is a dedicated student with a very bright future ahead of him. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the honourable member for Clare.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Depuis 2015, le média national Franco-Presse souligne chaque année le travail de 10 personnes de partout au pays qui ont eu un impact important sur la communauté francophone canadienne. Cette année, Nathalie Robichaud, directrice générale de la Société acadienne de Clare, est la seule néo-écossaise à recevoir cet honneur. Nathalie se passionne pour l'épanouissement du patrimoine culturel de notre région et travaille sur des projets innovateurs tels que nos chansons oubliées, qui rassemblent et préservent un catalogue de chansons de la région de Clare. Nathalie est particulièrement engagée auprès de nos jeunes et développe des projets qui valorisent notre langue et notre culture. Nathalie fait également du bénévolat pour de nombreuses organisations et est actuellement la vice-présidente du comité organisateur du Congrès mondial acadien 2024. Je demande à tous les membres de se joindre à moi pour féliciter Nathalie Robichaud d'avoir reçu cet honneur prestigieux et bien mérité. Merci.
I recognize the honourable member for Clare.
Speaker, since 2015, the national media outlet Franco-Presse has honored 10 people each year from across the country who have had a significant impact on the Canadian Francophone community. This year, Nathalie Robichaud, Executive Director of la Société acadienne de Clare, was the only Nova Scotian to receive this honor. Nathalie is passionate about preserving the cultural heritage of our area, working on such innovative projects as Nos Chansons Oubliées, which has gathered and preserved a catalogue of songs from the Clare region. Natalie is especially engaged in working with our youth and developing projects that value our language and culture. Natalie volunteers on many organizations and is currently the vice president of the Congrès mondial acadien 2024 organizing committee. I ask that all members join me in congratulating Natalie Robichaud for receiving this well-deserved and prestigious honor. Merci.
I recognize the honourable member for Halifax Citadel Sable Island.
Madam Speaker, all of us in this chamber have seen the ambition of young people in improving our collective future. In February, youth came to Halifax for Ocean Wise's 3-day urban learning journey as part of the Ocean Bridge program. Over the prior 6 months, the youth had worked together to develop their own ocean stewardship projects. The youth projects are nothing short of impressive. From a sustainable clothing mending pop-up shop to an interactive mapping tool to warn residents about pollution and invasive species, every idea came to fruition, and all of them will help us make better decisions with our ocean's health in mind. During the 3 days in Halifax, participants finally got to show off the rewards of their hard work, and I couldn't have been more proud to be involved. Madam Speaker, I ask my fellow members to recognize the Ocean Bridge participants for taking ownership of our ocean's health and developing so many unique projects to help them do it.
I recognize the honourable member for Hants West.
Madam Speaker, I rise today to bid a fond farewell to Susan McDougall and thank her for her leadership at Windsor Elms Village, where she has been the CEO for the past 7 years. Sue continually empowers and cultivates the growth of team members by nurturing their talents and skills to help them enhance their best versions of themselves. She has been a champion for the interests of the sector by actively engaging in influenced discussions with all levels of government. This ensures the needs and potentials of the sector are recognized and advocated for with unwavering dedication. By seizing innovative opportunities with enthusiasm and foresight, she has pioneered initiatives such as the Solar Field Project and the UVC Project, demonstrating true commitment to progress and sustainability. Madam Speaker, Sue will be leaving big shoes to fill, and I want to wish her all the best in her new role as the Director of Support Services for Continuing Care at Nova Scotia Health. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the honourable member for Timberley Prospect.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to recognize International Day of the Forest, which was yesterday. It is a day to celebrate and raise awareness of the importance of all types of forests that enhance the beauty of Nova Scotia and provide a living for so many. Our coastal influenced maritime climate of humid summers and cold winters gives rise to a unique forest mix of northern hardwood and boreal species, now recognized as one of North America's most endangered forests. Forests benefit Canadians environmentally with rich ecosystem they support. This ecosystem preserves soil, cycles nutrients, and supports biodiversity. Trees, forest plants, and forest soils also filter pollutants from the air and water, acting as natural cleansers. In addition to environmental benefits, a walk in the forest can generate many positive emotions, improve your mental health, improve your physical health, help you be more active, more creativity, and can also facilitate concentration and help you feel more relaxed. I'd like the members of the House Assembly to join me in recognizing, working to protect, and manage ecologically, appreciating the beauty and benefits of Nova Scotia's forests. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the honourable member for Cape Breton Centre, Whitney Peer.
Speaker, it's been 25 days since Autoport Workers Unifor Local 100 went on strike. On day one of the strike, CN Rail brought in scab workers. For 25 days, workers have faced disrespect and indignity as CN and Autoport used the courts and scab workers to try and break the spirit and resolve of their employees. Bringing in scab workers prolongs strikes and escalates tensions. This employer rather union bust than negotiate. This is precisely why anti-scab laws are needed. We stand in solidarity with striking workers at Autoport. CN Rail must end the use of scab labor, bargain in good faith. One day longer, one day stronger, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the honourable member for Glace Bay Dominion.
Madam Speaker, older Nova Scotians who worked hard to build our province deserve to be cared for in a residence that meets their needs. Seaview Manor in Glace Bay is just such a place. In December, on behalf of the Minister of Seniors and Long-Term Care, I had the honour of announcing that government will be replacing the Seaview Manor, increasing the number of rooms for seniors by 31 to a total of 144 beds at this home. Because no new senior homes have been built for more than 10 years, far too many of our most vulnerable seniors were in hospital beds or in their homes, waiting for a room in a long-term care facility. The new Seaview Manor will provide a welcome environment that seniors deserve. Like hospitals, these are healthcare facilities. However, they are also people's homes. Madam Speaker, I would like to thank and congratulate the staff and administration of Seaview Manor and the Department of Seniors and Long-Term Care for this amazing investment in the seniors of our community. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the honourable member for Bedford Basin.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to congratulate two Bedford groups that have come together to support one another. Every year, our stalwart team at the Bedford Legion distributes poppies in the run-up to Remembrance Day ceremonies. This past November, as always, they were supported by Wing 342 Bedford Lions Air Cadets, who came out to assist in the campaign. With their support, the Legion was able to raise about $70,000 to assist our local veterans and their families. And I should mention the Legion also supports our local cadet program, so it's a bit of circle of life, all of which is to say that I would like to congratulate both our Legion members and our Wing 342 Air Cadets for all they do to encourage young people and to provide support to our veterans and their families. We're so lucky to have both groups in our area. Thank you.
The honourable member for Halifax-Chebucto.
Madam Speaker, a memorial service will be held tomorrow in Durham, New Hampshire for Reverend Dr. Martin Rumscheit, who passed away January 29th at the age of 88. Martin Rumscheit was an ordained minister of the United Church of Canada who for decades was professor of historical and systematic theology at the Atlantic School of Theology. He was Eastern Canada's preeminent Christian socialist theologian and wrote widely on socialist currents in the work of Karl Barth, on the life and work of the anti-fascist theologian Dietrich Bonhoeffer, and on the Marxist feminism of theologian Dorothy Zola, amongst others. Martin was also a prominent voice in Christian-Jewish dialogue and reconciliation. He spoke often out of his own wartime experience as a German Christian about the Holocaust and the imperatives it imposes upon ways of thinking about Christian hope. Martin Rumscheit brought the richest of international political theology to a generation of students for the Christian ministry in Nova Scotia. His passing is a moment of major loss. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the honourable member for Colchester-Musquodoboit Valley.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, each year the tourism industry of Nova Scotia recognizes deserving organizations and individuals for their contributions and efforts. It is my privilege to work and live near two of the 2023 recipients, recognized at the 46th Annual Summit, Building Resiliency. First is Bill Hay, owner of Mastodon Ridge Developments, and that's where my office is located. Bill was awarded the Alistair and Francis Campbell Lifetime Tourism Achievement Award. And next is Alan Sillaboy, multi-talented artist and musician from nearby Millbrook, the recipient of the Indigenous Tourism Lifetime Achievement Award, sponsored by the Nova Scotia Indigenous Tourism Enterprise Network. Please join me as I extend my congratulations to these enterprising and talented individuals. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the honourable member for Yarmouth.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I rise today to bring attention to a condition that affects 1 in 10 Nova Scotians, endometriosis. As we mark Endometriosis Awareness Month in Nova Scotia, it's crucial to recognize the profound impact this often misunderstood condition has on individuals. Those living with endometriosis endure debilitating pain, compromised quality of life, and often face challenges in accessing timely diagnosis and effective treatment. Among those tirelessly advocating for better understanding and support for endometriosis sufferers in Nova Scotia and abroad is Maggie Archibald, whose dedication to this cause has been instrumental in raising awareness and promoting education. I would also like to take this moment to extend my deepest gratitude to everyone involved in advocacy for endometriosis. Your tireless efforts are invaluable in bringing about positive change and improving the lives of those affected. We must continue to promote education and improve health care resources for those affected by this condition. Let us use this month as an opportunity to amplify the voices of those impacted by endometriosis and to advocate for greater research, resources, and compassion. Together, Madam Speaker, we can create a world where every person receives the care and support they need to live a full and healthy, high quality of life.
I recognize the honourable member for Cumberland North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today I rise to recognize Beth Peterkin, Executive Director of the Cumberland Chamber of Commerce. Beth joined the Amherst and Area Chamber of Commerce as the General Manager in December of 2023, bringing many years of nonprofit management skills to the team. Beth is also a small business owner herself, operating a management consulting business from her home in Parsboro. The Cumberland Chamber of Commerce, formerly the Amherst Chamber and Area Chamber of Commerce, has recently expanded the scope of its services to encompass all of Cumberland County. With the Chamber continually looking for ways to provide educational, marketing, and network opportunities, Beth is certainly the right person to help the Chamber achieve this goal. Madam Speaker, please join me in wishing Beth Peterkin the very best as she embarks on her expanded role with the Cumberland Chamber of Commerce. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the honourable member for Dartmouth North.
Madam Speaker, Carrie Ann Burnett, a migrant worker from Jamaica, got very good news recently. She finally got her MSI card in the mail. This was the result of a multi-year fight to get health coverage in the wake of her 2022 cervical cancer diagnosis. As a migrant worker in the strawberry fields, Carrie Ann was not eligible for MSI, and her 2 surgeries cost $81,000. In 2023, Carrie Ann was approved for the interim federal health program, and then in January of this year, she was granted a work permit through to July 2025, and that work permit made her eligible for MSI. Though Carrie Ann now has medical coverage, many migrant workers do not, as their work permits are not long enough to qualify. Carrie Ann and No One Is Illegal Halifax Jabuktuk, who has supported her through her treatment and fight for coverage, are calling on the provincial government to immediately provide migrant workers with MSI coverage when they arrive in Nova Scotia. I congratulate Carrie Ann on receiving her MSI card. I wish her good health, and I stand in solidarity with No One Is Illegal and migrant workers in their call for MSI for all.
I recognize the honourable member for Queens.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today to acknowledge and congratulate the Liverpool Championship Host Society for securing the opportunity to host the Canadian Mixed Doubles Olympic Curling Trials. This coming December 30th through January 4th, top curlers from across the country will compete at Queen's Place Emira Centre in Liverpool to decide who will represent Canada at the 2026 Winter Olympics in Italy. I wish to express my sincere gratitude to the volunteers of the Host Society, along with all of those involved from Liverpool Curling Club and Queen's Place. Securing and hosting such a prestigious and high-profile event takes the time and efforts of many. I know all competitors will receive a warm and hospitable Queens County welcome, and the event will be a great success. I can't wait for the New Year's party. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the honourable member for Sydney, member 2.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to my place to recognize someone that the member 2 community lost, but our entire island lost that in the last number of months, and that was Danny Paul from member 2. Danny Paul held the titles of Elder, Pipe Carrier, and Knowledge Holder for Mi'kmaq cultures and traditions. He was one of our greatest advocates for Mi'kmaq rights and the traditions, not only in Cape Breton but across the region. Danny was recognized as a recipient of the Grand Chief Donald Marshall Senior Elder Achievement Award, the Member 2 Community Edward Kabaddi Memorial Award for Aboriginal Language, and he was also a member of the Institute of Natural Resources Committee, Parks Canada Seawall Trail Committee, an elder in residence at NSCC Marconi in Sydney, and in Acadia University. He was a great advocate for youth, holding yearly moose hunting camps and salmon fishing adventures in Margaree for many of the youth in the area. Danny was a friend of many people in Cape Breton and beyond, and we all miss him. So I rise to my place to recognize one of the Mi'kmaq culture's greatest champions, Danny Paul.
I recognize the honourable member for Halifax, Needham.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today to recognize World Down Syndrome Day, which we all celebrated yesterday, but each and every day we should be talking about Down syndrome. Down syndrome is a naturally occurring chromosomal arrangement that has always been a part of the human condition, a condition in which a person has an extra chromosome. People with Down syndrome are just like you and me and have an inherent right to be accepted and included and valued as equal members of our community. Yesterday, I wore mixed match socks, like a lot of us in this room, to get people talking about Down syndrome. We need to have conversations, and we need to raise awareness of Down syndrome. So every day, think about folks in our community and the fabric of life in it and how we can all spread awareness. I'd like all members of this House to join me in making the call for people around the world to end the stereotypes. So on World Down Syndrome Day and every day, I'd just like for us to acknowledge that.
I recognize the honourable member for Sackville-Cobequid.
Madam Speaker, I rise today to applaud the Rotary Club of Sackville and area. Thanks to the members of the club, Acadia Park in Lower Sackville is home to 2 beautiful mosaic murals, individually hand-painted by members of the community. Mosaic 1 celebrates the 200th anniversary of the 2 great roads of Sackville, the Windsor Highway, now the Old Sackville, used to be the Old Sackville Road, and Cobequid Road to Truro, that paved the way for year-round travel and trade, contributing to the thriving community we are today. Mosaic 2 reflects the club's passion for education and literacy, showcasing the former Acadia School's rich history while honoring our children, the heartbeat of our community. Madam Speaker, I would ask that all members of the House of Assembly join me in applauding the Rotary Club of Sackville and area for capturing Sackville's history, leaving a legacy for all to enjoy. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the honourable member for Fairview-Clayton Park.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, today I rise to express my heartfelt gratitude to a dedicated volunteer in Fairview-Clayton Park. That's Yvonne Noel, who retired as community manager with Fairview-Clayton Park Square Roots at the end of last year. Throughout her 4 years in this role, Yvonne demonstrated exceptional leadership and tireless efforts through a pandemic, through floods, power outages, and so much more. Her passion and determination have been instrumental in Square Roots' growth and success and in positively impacting the lives of hundreds of families within our community. Just this week, Yvonne was notified that she will be receiving an HRM Volunteer Award for District 10. This award recognizes the extraordinary contributions of outstanding individuals who volunteer their time and skills in our communities. I actually can't think of a more deserving person than Yvonne. Madam Speaker, we will miss Yvonne's leadership at Square Roots, but I anticipate that she will be working at something new not too long from now. Thank you very much.
I recognize the honourable member for Halifax Citadel Sable Island.
Madam Speaker, the Canadian Environmental Music Awards were launched on March 17th at Halifax's Rebecca Cohen Auditorium during a concert put on by Music Declares Emergency. Quote, there is absolutely no doubt at all that we are in a massive planetary crisis, said Kim Fry, co-founder of Canada's chapter of Music Declares Emergency. It's easy to feel the weight of that. And really, it's the artists who give us hope. It's the artists who open up our hearts and let us connect with others. Hosted by CBC's Jeff Douglas, the March 17th Climate Emergency Concert paid tribute to the environmental legacies of Neil Young and Joni Mitchell. The concert featured Tara Spencer, Logan Statz, Jen Grant, Talia Schlanger, T. Thomason, Braden Lamb, Alexi Campaign, Maura and Claire, Tragedy Ann Moonfruits, cellist India Gailey, and guitarist Donna Grantis. Madam Speaker, I thank all artists contributing to this effort because, as their tagline says, no music on a dead planet.
I recognize the honourable member for Lunenburg.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise today to recognize 80 years of music festivals in Lunenburg County and a fabulous fundraising concert that marked this special milestone. Held on March 2nd at Central United Church in Lunenburg, the gala concert featured dozens of local performers, from young ingenues to seasoned instructors, in a wonderfully diverse program. There was singing, classical, spiritual, folk, and musical theater, as well as instrumental performances on piano, fiddle, guitar, even harmonica. It was a great afternoon and a fitting tribute to 8 decades of musical excellence and encouragement. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the honourable member for Cole Harbour Dartmouth.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today to recognize the Dartmouth Book Exchange, whose history within our community spans more than 25 years. Specializing not only in new and used books, they are also a goldmine of Atlantic Canada literature with a focus on Dartmouth and Nova Scotia, while very much embracing works from all around the Atlantic provinces. Store owner Amy McIsaac actively promotes local authors through weekly spotlights. The store is a venue for events like teas and readings, fostering a symbiotic relationship between the shop and vibrant Dartmouth community. Despite the challenges faced by authors in a competitive landscape, the Book Exchange plays a pivotal role in helping them overcome these obstacles with networking opportunities. Sue Slade with the Dartmouth Exchange emphasizes that reading is an affordable form of escapism, contributing to the thriving literary scene in Dartmouth. Please join me in wishing the Dartmouth Book Exchange continued success in our communities of Cole Harbour, Dartmouth. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the honourable member for Cape Breton Centre, Whitney Peer.
Madam Speaker, I rise to recognize the Lingayen Heritage Society's Children's Christmas Party. On December 17th, 2023, the Children's Christmas Party was held at the Lingayen Community Hall. It was fun for the whole family. The kids played games and danced to the live music while eagerly awaiting for the Santa Claus arrival. When Santa arrived, many met him with enthusiasm, apprehension for some, and tears for one or two. The apprehension and tears soon gave way to happiness when Santa reached into his bag and pulled out presents for all the children. I want to thank the Lingayen Heritage Society for organizing this great community event.
I recognize the honourable member for Pictou Centre.
Madam Speaker, Donald Ducky McDonald, a retired teacher and principal, carries with him a legacy of excellence both on and off the field. In his youth, he was renowned for his prowess as a hockey and baseball player. Transitioning seamlessly from player to mentor, McDonald dedicated decades of his life to coaching school sport teams, instilling values of teamwork and determination in generations of athletes. As an educator, he was cherished by his students, known not only for his passion for teaching, but also his unwavering support and guidance. His classroom was a haven of inspiration and learning, where his students flourished under his mentorship, forever grateful for their impact on their lives. Beyond the school grounds, Ducky's allegiance lies with the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Los Angeles Dodgers, teams that have captured his heart with their thrilling performances and storied histories. During the summer months, Ducky retreats to his cherished cottage at Melbury Beach, a sanctuary nestled amidst numerous friends with his partner Heather. There he finds himself reflecting on cherished memories and embracing the simple pleasures of relaxation and well-deserved leisure. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the honourable member for Clayton Park West.
Madam Speaker, I rise today to congratulate Emma Creelman, Mayar Ibraba, and Sophia Mulak. These are Halifax West students who created a winning micro-ecosystem for Global Ocean Innovation Challenge. The students from Halifax West are passionate about the science and created the Sea Hive to examine how one species can feed off the waste of another. They created the project for the Brilliant Blue Challenge, an innovation competition worldwide that encourages youth to put forward creative ideas to protect our oceans. Madam Speaker, I ask the House to join me in congratulating this innovative team on their award-winning ecosystem that highlights the importance of maintaining our oceans species. Thank you.
I recognize the honourable member for Cumberland North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today to congratulate and recognize Deanne Fitzpatrick of Amherst, who recently became a member of the Order of Canada. She is being honored for her contributions to the advancement and recognition of rug hooking as an art form. Deanne was born and raised in Placenta Bay, Newfoundland, and came to Amherst over 30 years ago. She is very well known in artistic circles for her beautiful hooked rugs, and her work is in permanent exhibits at the Art Gallery of Nova Scotia and the Canadian Museum of Civilization in Ottawa, among other galleries. In her downtown Amherst studio, she creates her designs, sells kits, writes books, teaches rug hooking, and runs online creative retreats. Deanne truly believes being creative changes people's changes people, and so she encourages everyone to pursue their artistic side. Despite all this, she was truly surprised to receive a call from the Office of the Governor General telling her she was admitted to the Order of Canada. Madam Speaker, please join me in congratulating Deanne Fitzpatrick.
I recognize the honourable member for Hants East. Sorry.
No problem, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'd like to congratulate Wyatt Sanford, otherwise known as the Kennecook Kid, on his incredible achievement in qualifying for the 2024 Olympics in boxing. Completing the Olympic level not just once but twice is a testament to his hard work and talent. Only 6 other boxers since 1984 have accomplished this feat. Just look at his 2023 results. In February, Wyatt won gold at Nationals. In March, he won a fight at St. John's. In June's Canadian Olympics qualifier, he grabbed the gold. In August, at the Continental qualifier, he won silver. In October's Pan Am American Games, he won gold, which got him a ticket to the Olympics. I will look forward to cheering him and all of Team Canada on at Paris Olympics. Please join me in wishing Wyatt the very best in his pursuit of excellence. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the honourable member for Northside Westmount.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. And today I would like to congratulate a good friend of mine, Mr. Aaron Lewis. Everyone will know Aaron as a fantastic musician in the Cape Breton area. He's been involved in almost every show in Cape Breton. But the reason I want to recognize him today is that as a member of the Carleton Show Band, they've just been awarded a star on the Brampton Arts Walk of Fame, Madam Speaker, and I want to congratulate Aaron and the members of the band. One of the members of the band was Aaron's dad, and it must have been a great honor for him to be able to play music with his dad in the Carleton Show Band. So congratulations, Aaron. Well deserved. Thank you.
I recognize the honourable member for Dartmouth East.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise this morning to recognize the Abundance Store located in Dartmouth East. The Abundance Store is a charming second-hand clothing boutique run and supported by the Elizabeth Fry Society of Mainland Nova Scotia. This thrift store is giving women who have gone through the criminal justice system a chance to take back control of their lives. By providing opportunities for learning new life skills and gaining work experience, the Abundance Store is playing a vital role in helping these women reintegrate into society. Madam Speaker, by continuing to support and promote initiatives like this, we can create a more inclusive and supportive community for everyone. Madam Speaker, I'd like to welcome the Abundance Store to Dartmouth East, and I hope that their success continues to grow, bringing positive change to even more lives into the future. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the honourable member for Digby Annapolis.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, as we continue to celebrate Women's History Month, I rise to recognize 3 amazing women in my life, my dear friends Erin Jeffrey, Jessica Feindl, and Lisa Croft. Erin, Jessica, and Lisa and I have been friends for 20 years. My mother once said to me, the friends you meet in university are the friends you'll have for life, and Madam Speaker, she was absolutely right. Over the years, we've been there for each other through the good times and hard times, through heartbreaks, marriages, and growing families, to trips to reconnect and celebrate, all while watching each other grow and thrive. These women are passionate, talented, funny, caring, driven, and they inspire and motivate me each and every day. Erin, Jessica, and Lisa, thank you for being my biggest fans all those years ago and now. Here's to another 20 years of friendship and so much more. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Fairview Clayton Park.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise today to acknowledge the extraordinary contributions of Tova Sherman, the CEO of Reachability, an organization dedicated to providing supportive and accessible programs that empower individuals facing barriers to employment. Tova embodies true leadership, always ready to tackle challenges head-on and champion the belief that everyone has something valuable to offer. Reachability stands as a testament to Tova's commitment to addressing injustice and inequity, transforming her passion into her life's mission. At Reachability, Tova and her team offer a wide range of services tailored to meet the unique needs of each individual, from employment workshops to self-management assistance. Reachability ensures that every person receives the support they need to achieve their personal goals in a safe and supportive environment. Tova's dedication to creating a more inclusive society is truly inspiring, and her leadership at Reachability continues to make a profound impact on the lives of countless individuals facing barriers in Fairview Clayton Park. Thank you, Tova, for your tireless advocacy, compassionate leadership, and commitment to building a more equitable future for all. Thank you.
I recognize the honourable member for Shelburne.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today to congratulate Drew, Jacqueline, and Courtney McNeil on their purchase of Coastal Tales Dog Daycare and Boarding. While looking for their first home together, Drew from Shelburne and Courtney from Halifax came across this business opportunity in Shelburne and knew it was the right fit for them and their community. Both great dog lovers and dog owners, they knew they had to pursue this dream business. At Coastal Tales, your pup can socialize or splash in a pool, and you can purchase all your dog's essentials and access training classes. But most importantly, your pup can just relax and return home after a busy day at daycare. Madam Speaker, I respectfully ask all members to join me in wishing Drew and Courtney continued success in their business. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the honourable member for Chester St. Margaret's.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm going to put this down because it's MLA Tykert's member statement, and I'll fly off. Actually, I want to stand to speak about three wonderful people. They are all councillors at the municipality of Chester. Floyd Chatford, Alan Weber, Tina Connors. I think I've learned so much from them with my 5 years on council. Alan Weber, for example, 42 years in council, 8 of those terms, 32 years as the warden. Tina Connors, 11 years, and Floyd, whom I so lovingly call Floydy, 27 years, with most of those years being deputy warden. All three are fantastic. All three taught me a lot. I adore them, and I talk to them all the time, and I just truly appreciate them. And so if you're listening, which you're probably not,
Thank you.
Thank you, but if you're, I adore you, and thank you for teaching me so much.
I recognize the honourable member for Guysborough Tracadie.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today to recognize Nancy O'Regan of Guysborough for her lifelong commitment to volunteering in our community. Nancy started her volunteering many years ago when her children were still toddlers. She's one of the original members of GLOW, the Guysborough Learning Opportunities for Women, back in the late 1980s. She was also on the board in the early days of Kids First and helped launch the Transit Association of Guysborough. As well, Nancy is a member and volunteer with the Chedabucto Curling Club, Guysborough Players, and the Quilting Club. Nancy also served as a council member for the municipality of the District of Guysborough. Nancy's career in community development projects and facilitation for groups who are wanting to see change in our communities has always been one of her passions. Most of her career has been dedicated to this. After years of working hard with the Guysborough County Housing Network, Nancy is now the nominated chair of the newly formed Community First Guysborough County Housing Association, a non-for-profit group focusing on creating affordable housing throughout the county. And I know Nancy will be a huge asset to this association's board of volunteers. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Order. The time is now 10 o'clock, and we will begin questions put by members to ministers, and we will finish at 10:50. I recognize the honourable leader of the official opposition.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, doctors in this province are raising serious warnings about this government's law to force them to give personal health information over to the minister or her designates. According to Dr. O'Dane, the head of Doctors Nova Scotia, the way this legislation is written is quite broad, and it's not entirely clear what information the minister is going to be accessing. Dr. O'Dane goes on to say that this could compromise the therapeutic relationship between doctors and their patients. Madam Speaker, it's clear that doctors were not consulted in a serious change in the laws of this province, forcing them to give patient health information that's personal over to the minister. Why weren't doctors consulted on this?
I recognize the Honourable Minister for Health and Wellness.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the member for the question. It's really an important question. I'm really glad he asked it, actually. So there has been consultation. There's a couple of things. So we did meet with Doctors Nova Scotia recently to talk about the changes to the Personal Health Information Act. We talked about the test and try pilot, which Doctors Nova Scotia is involved in. So we do currently have a pilot where people have access to their records. And this is the enabling legislation that will help us do that for all Nova Scotians. It's working well under the test and try. We are working with physicians There's 10,000 patients who now have access to their results as a result of this, and so that test and try pilot will help inform how we move forward.
The Leader of the Official Opposition.
Madam Speaker, there's been no consultation that has clearly happened with Doctors Nova Scotia, and this is very different than giving patients access to their own personal health information, than giving the minister access to their personal health information without consent. I'm sure that the individuals involved in that pilot gave consent. This legislation that's proposed does not require patient consent for this. It forces doctors and their record keepers to give personal health information to the minister. This is concerning, and we're hearing from doctors privately that they think this can really increase the risk to patients and doctors, particularly from bad actors, especially considering that this government has not even protected people's personal health information in their own staff, Madam Speaker. My question to the minister is, what protections are in place to ensure consent is required from patients and that their personal health information will not be used for political purposes?
I recognize the Honourable Minister for Health and Wellness.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the member for the question. So we will be developing regulations in collaboration not only with Doctors Nova Scotia, but also, very importantly, with the College of Physicians and Surgeons. So currently, there is data that is collected at an aggregate level from Nova Scotia Health, from IWK, from EHS. So it tells us how people are moving through the system. We're not interested in individual information. That's not the point. But what we want to know, as an example, if the member opposite were to ask me how many visits were offered yesterday in primary care offices across this province, I wouldn't be able to tell that individual. I can tell them about urgent care. I can tell them about virtual care. I can tell them about emergency rooms, but I can't get a line of sight into how many visits there are. So in order to manage the system, we need aggregate data to better inform our decisions.
I recognize the Leader of the Official Opposition on his final supplementary.
Madam Speaker, the word of the law is not aggregated data. It's personal health information, and it's doctors themselves that are raising the red flag on this. And the fact that there's been no public consultation on this, there's been no indication that this is going to require patient consent, I think is very concerning. Again, considering that this government had the biggest cybersecurity breach in our province's history. They weren't even able to protect a staff person's Twitter from being impacted by a bad actor. How are they going to protect people's personal health information, Madam Speaker? This is a very concerning thing. The fact that this was also bundled in an omnibus bill is even more concerning. The public doesn't know about this. Doctors didn't know about this. Will the minister please pause this part of the legislation to ensure that she has the chance to talk to patients and doctors before they move forward with this potentially very dangerous change?
I recognize the Honourable Minister for Health and Wellness.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So as we have said to Doctors Nova Scotia and to the college, that the regulations will be formulated with their input. We also know that we're in a test and try environment right now, working with physicians who are actually working with us. It is not the personal health information at an individual level we are collecting. It sits under the Personal Health Information Act. It is very clear there are robust privacy laws in place. As a minister, regardless of who is in this chair, that minister will be subject to those regulations and that legislation, and I want people to feel reassured. This is around managing the healthcare system, and it will give people access to the information that they have, which is their record. We hear about people not having access to records when physicians leave. This will enable them to have access to their health records moving forward.
I recognize the Honourable Member for Halifax Needham.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is for the Minister of African Nova Scotian Affairs. African Nova Scotians and Indigenous Blacks who descend from free and enslaved Black planters, Black loyalists, Black refugees, Maroons, and other Black people who inhabited the original 52 land-based Black communities in Nova Scotia are undeniably a distinct people who deserve recognition as such. My question is, I'd like to know, do the Minister and the government members agree?
I recognize the Honourable Minister for African Nova Scotian Affairs.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to the member opposite for the question. With regards to recognizing African Nova Scotians as a distinct people, I believe that before that item is brought on this floor for discussion and debate, it is something that needs to be discussed, with the African Nova Scotian community. We recognize that people of African descent have been in existence in this province for over 400 years. And we also recognize the injustices that have been done. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the honourable member for Halifax Needham.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So this discussion has been ongoing, and especially where they've changed the distinction, I wanted to bring it forward because it has been discussed by the Black Family Meeting, by the Black Congress, across the country it has been discussed. So African Nova Scotians have a very long history in this province, starting in the 1600s. Through these hundreds of years, they have experienced a unique history and also shared experiences of structural, systemic, and individual discrimination. 2017, UN Working Group of the People of African Descent said it. 2018 by Dalhousie. So yesterday, I was very shocked on the International Day for the Elimination of Racism when the government refused to join opposition members in recognizing African Nova Scotians as a distinct people. Can the minister please explain why this government voted against this?
I recognize the Honourable Minister for African Nova Scotian Affairs.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to the member opposite for the question. Again, as I said, I believe that that is first a proper discussion within the African Nova Scotian community. Thank you.
I recognize the Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Madam Speaker, the minister is telling people that this change that is going to force doctors to give personal health records to the minister is about giving patients access to those records. That's not the case. It's about giving the minister access to it. The minister said this is about aggregated data and patient visits to primary care. The minister would have that information through billing codes and also the aggregated data that's collected clinically by the NSHA. That information is already there from an aggregate perspective. This question is, why does the minister believe it's important for her to have access to individuals' personal health information? This is a scary situation for a lot of people, and they don't understand why.
I recognize the Honourable Minister for Health and Wellness.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And it does, this change does sit under the Personal Health Information Act. There are very robust rules in that act. The regulations will be drafted in collaboration with Doctors Nova Scotia, with the College of Physicians and Surgeons. It will be built on the learnings that we have currently with the pilot, where 10,000 patients now have access to their information. There will be aggregate data that will help the next health minister, myself, the system, in order to understand, as an example, the ability of patients to be seen. Eventually, hopefully, text reminders as an example. The EMR information between a physician or a nurse practitioner and their patient is not the information that we're interested in. The regulations will reflect that. We will make sure that they are carefully considered.
I recognize the Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Madam Speaker, patients are not protected in regulations that are controlled by Cabinet. They're protected by the laws of this province. That's where patients are protected. Doctors privately and publicly are saying this is a bad move, that is going to jeopardize patient safety, that it's going to impact their relationship with patients, and doctors weren't even consulted with this. Also, this was brought in an omnibus bill that did not involve public consultation, that did not involve consultation with doctors. It is fundamentally changing how the privacy around people's personal health information, and it's mandating, not through the consent of the patient, but through legal mandate to the doctors to give that personal information specifically to the minister. Does the minister not see why doctors and patients should be concerned about this?
The Honourable Minister for Health and Wellness.
Again, I will go back to the fact that we appreciate that there is concern in the community. We will continue to work with physicians, Doctors Nova Scotia, who is their advocate. We will work with the college. We know that there are concerns. We don't want to be outside of legislation or create any undue harm. We want people to access the system. We are at a time of transformation. There are digital solutions. There is data that is required in order for us to do HR planning, which everyone on the other side is so critical about. This is information that will help us plan for the system. There is no Minister of Health in the history of ever that wants to sit and read through people's charts. That is not the intent of this. This intention is to manage the system to ensure that we are making sure that there is access to health care and that we can adequately plan for human resource needs.
I recognize the honourable member for Bedford Basin.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Recently, there was shock and consternation in Ontario when a mother there went public with her daughter's attempts to get treatment for appendicitis. There, a 17-year-old waited 19 hours for an emergency appendectomy. It was all over the news, and I'll table that. Madam Speaker, a similar case occurred not too long ago in Dartmouth. There, a woman went to Dartmouth General at 4 p.m. November 23rd. She'd been in increasing pain for more than 12 hours already. The ER was jammed. Now, as a nurse, the Minister of Health would know prompt treatment of an acute illness like this is necessary. How long would the Minister of Health expect a person with appendicitis to wait for surgery after arriving at a hospital in this province?
I recognize the Honourable Minister for Health and Wellness.
So certainly I can't speak to an individual case on the floor of the legislature, but what I would expect is that we would, that the hospitals, whether it be IWK or hospitals at Nova Scotia Health, would follow the Canadian Triage Acuity Scale guidelines. And that clearly outlines, after an assessment when a triage score is assigned, how long an individual should wait. I cannot speak on behalf of the clinicians who were in that department that day, nor about the patient's condition, but we have standards and we have a triage scale that helps inform decisions at a clinical level.
The honourable member for Bedford Basin.
Madam Speaker, this woman was forced to spend her night in a lazy boy-style chair in a room with other patients in pain. There was no place to lay down. The staff was kind and thoughtful. The nurse was run off her feet. I should mention that this person was a new mother. She had undergone an emergency C-section 2.5 weeks prior. She had a preemie waiting for her at home. A bed was found for her early the next morning in a hallway. Her surgery was performed more than 24 hours after she arrived at the hospital. She later discovered her appendix had in fact leaked. We are hearing from ER docs that the situation in our emergency departments is untenable. People are dying, and contrary to what our Premier has asserted, they are dying needlessly. Our emergency rooms need help. When is this government going to provide it?
I recognize the Honourable Minister of Health and Wellness.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I think what's really important to understand is that the work that's happening in seniors and long-term care and the addition of 5,700 beds in this in our province will help the emergency room. The Safer Act. The investments in access and flow is going to help the emergency rooms. The addition of a contract that is very competitive for physicians to work in this province is going to help. The mobility teams that we have hired throughout this province in order to mobilize patients and get them discharged more quickly will help. There has been an underinvestment and no strategy in our healthcare system for years. We bring that through Action for Health, and we bring that through historical financial investments in our system.
I recognize the Honourable Member for Fairview Clayton Park.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, in Fairview Clayton Park, we've had an 8-year increase of 688 students in our school system. The average age of our schools is 62, so being built in around 1961, but Clayton Park Junior High was actually built in 1946. Each school in the riding has at least 2 portables or modules, and there are 31 classrooms that are not situated within the main school. My question to the Minister of Public Works: when can my community expect to get the school that we desperately need?
I recognize the Honourable Minister for Public Works.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to my honourable colleague for the question. We know that the province is growing and that new schools are required to meet that demand. I mean, we're seeing that in all areas, but especially in the metro area. The Fairview Clayton Park Middle School, is that the one you're talking about? Yeah, so right now we have worked through the process with HRM, and an appraisal is being done of that property, and I expect we'll see something in the near future.
I recognize the Honourable Member for Fairview Clayton Park.
That's wonderful. I'm very excited about that. So we did have the plan for the 4 promised schools in the capital plan. My question to the minister, though, is do we have a location for that school, and is she able to let us know where it will be?
I I recognize the Honourable Minister for Public Works.
So the EECD is actually reviewing that site proposal that we have provided from Public Works, and as soon as that can be released, I'm sure you'll be the first to know.
I recognize the Honourable Member for Dartmouth North.
Madam Speaker, Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Robert Strang, recently urged Nova Scotians to check their immunization status, and for many, to update their measles vaccination. Now we're hearing that pharmacies and primary care providers are overwhelmed by demand. There simply are not enough doses of the vaccine. Carrie Ellen Graham, a pharmacist in Halifax, has said the bottom line is you could try your pharmacy, although most pharmacies are out, and a lot of doctors' offices are out too. How are Nova Scotians supposed to protect themselves and follow the advice of the Chief Medical Officer if there are no shots available? Thanks.
The Honourable Minister for Health and Wellness.
So first of all, I want to clarify and go on the record that there are shots available. There is MMR vaccine in this province. There is no shortage. Because of the demand, the orders that physicians and pharmacists have, they've gone through those orders more quickly. It's simply reaching back out to the Bio Depot, explaining that they are out of the vaccine and ordering more.
The Honourable Member for Dartmouth North.
It would be great if people could access the vaccine through mobile health units in cases where pharmacies and primary care providers are not a viable option. But according to Nova Scotia Health's website, many parts of Nova Scotia do not have mobile immunization clinics scheduled until April, and many are not even offering the measles vaccine. Measles cases across Canada are on the rise. We've heard this. Nova Scotians should not have to wait several more weeks to access the recommended vaccination. So what is this government doing to ensure that all Nova Scotians have access to the vaccinations they need when they need them?
I recognize the Honourable Minister for Health and Wellness.
So Nova Scotians have a variety of different ways in which they can access vaccine. They can access them through the mobile clinics. They can access through primary care providers. They can access them through pharmacists. There are a variety of different ways. There is no shortage. There is high demand, which has caused office and folks to go through their supply, but there is no shortage of the vaccine. So if individuals require more vaccine, whether they have a pharmacy or whether they have an office, they simply need to reach out to the Bio Depot and increase their supply.
I recognize the Honourable Member for Timberley Prospect.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I've been working with various departments in HRM to prioritize planning for public infrastructure needed to accommodate existing issues with entering and exiting the Prospect communities. The last meeting I had was in November with GRTA, Public Works, and HRM to discuss the concerns and improvements needed for Prospect Road. I'm pleased the meeting resulted in a commitment to conduct a study to consider strategic investment to improve safety along this road. There are 17 communities that span 30 kilometers from Goodwood to West Dover, with one corridor for access that often closes with motor vehicle accidents and fires. We just had another fire literally this week. Can the Minister please provide an update if this comprehensive study is underway and when we can expect the findings?
I recognize the Honourable Minister for Public Works.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the Honourable Member for the question. Absolutely, that is an extremely busy road. As the member knows, I have a very good friend that lives down in Prospect, so I travel that road a lot, and it's incredible the amount of traffic that has increased on that road since I started going there 30 years ago. This is a joint project with DPW, HRM, and Housing, and the last couple of months, I know when I say last couple of months, it may sound like a long time, but we have actually taken those last couple of months to really look at the scoping that's required for this study. That is done, and I expect the tender to go out for that in the next couple weeks.
All right.
I recognize the Honourable Member for Timberley Prospect.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I appreciate the answer. The overburdened Prospect Road has seen some infrastructure investments with turning lanes throughout the last number of years, but we're going to see traffic counts climb exponentially with new residential developments considered. Expansion of Goodwood Compost Facility will have an additional 36 heavy trucks coming in per day. Expansion of the Raggett Lake Industrial Park, potential redevelopment of Halifax Exhibition Park, and a new soundstage, Madam Speaker. There is tremendous pressure on this road. Will the study consider potentially a new access points to eliminate that one corridor in and out that shuts down traffic in and out? Will they consider an access point from the Prospect Road to the 103 or St. Margaret's Bay Road so that residents can get in and out in the event of an emergency? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the Honourable Minister for Public Works.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to the honourable member for the question. I don't want to presuppose what is going to come out of the traffic study, but what I can tell you is the traffic study is going to be very extensive. So the JRTA is involved. The work of the JRTA, what they're doing is absolutely incredible, and I know the member has spent some time with them and talking about his concerns. But what I will say is that we are committed to improving the safety of our roads. We have a safety fund. We also have one of the largest capital programs this year, over $500 million. We have doubled and tripled programs. So I want the member to know that I certainly understand his concerns. I understand the amount of MVAs that happen there, the traffic demand, and we'll work with you.
I recognize the Honourable Member for Clayton Park West.
Madam Speaker, the schools in Clayton Park West are bursting at the seams. We have added modulars. Then now we're adding, on top of modulars, we're adding portables again at Park West School. When talking to HRM counterparts, they're telling me that they are waiting for the province in the negotiation process with the land for that school. Can the Minister of Public Works tells us what is the reason for the delay in the negotiation? And they actually, HRM is waiting for the province. That we know. Thank you.
I recognize the Honourable Minister for Public Works.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the honourable member for the question. I know she's very passionate about this. She asks me every time we have question period, every session. The information that the member is providing me, it's different information than what I have. The information that I have is that that land is being appraised right now. HRM is appraising that, and then we'll go through with the deal.
I recognize the Honourable Member for Clayton Park West.
I thank the Minister, and I'll go back to my municipal counterparts and tell them what you told me, and I thank you for that. Now, for the Minister of Education, parents honestly are contacting our office constantly about the school. Can she tell me when do we expect shovels in the ground and how much was allocated in this year's budget for that school? That will tell us if this school is going to be, if we're going to have shovels in the ground or not. Could she please tell us?
I recognize the Honourable Minister for Education.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to the member opposite for the question. So we have a robust school capital plan to the tune of $1 billion, Madam Speaker. That will be allocated for projects across the province, including the project that the member opposite is asking about. So that money will go to build schools. It will go to plan for schools, which is the stage that the member opposite school is in. It will go to put shovels in the ground. But the $1 billion is also going to the more robust long-term planning that we're doing and diverse planning that we're doing, which prior governments have never done. We have a plan that includes long-term planning for school builds. We have, for the first time ever, a modular plan that allows us to be nimble. We have an increased technical capital asset plan, Madam Speaker. We're going to build in...
I recognize the Honourable Member for Hammonds Plains, Lucasville.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is for the Minister of DNR. It's been nearly a year since the Upper Tantallon Hammonds Plains wildfire took place, and HRM has produced a report on, I guess, the aftermath and the situation as it was from their perspective. The RCMP produced a decision that was only made available through a Freedom of Information request, that there was allegedly no criminal arson involved. The DNR is responsible for the lead on this file, and we're anticipating a report. Can the Minister please provide an update?
I recognize the Honourable Minister for Natural Resources.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and thank you to the member opposite. Truly, we had historical wildfires last year. Over 24,000 hectares of our province was burned, over 200 homes. We give thanks every day that there was no loss of life during those fires. We did commit during those fires to the member opposite and everybody involved, the member from Shelburne, that there would be an after-action plan. I know the member, speaking with them over the last 2 weeks, respects the fact that our staff were also involved with two post-tropical storms responses, a snow response, and the devastating floods that did take place. But I do like to inform the member, we did receive the report this week. It's on my desk right now, and very shortly the review and update will be made public. But I'll speak in a second.
I recognize the Honourable Member for Hammonds Plains, Lucasville.
Thank you. We look forward to seeing that report. We know that despite there being no human life lost, there were lives lost. Pets were lost during that fire, and the 151 homes that were destroyed. People are reeling from that still, and we're looking forward to seeing that report. I understand that there is a third party that is conducting that investigation. I'm wondering if the minister will table the name of that entity that's responsible for conducting that report and the mandate that they were given at the time that they were charged to conduct it.
I recognize the Honourable Minister for Natural Resources.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the member opposite. What I'll say, it wasn't an investigation. It was an after action report about the response from the department. At very first glance, what I can say is it stems exactly what we thought we did, and it does give kudos to the response that the department did, the resources that it pulled in, but it also gives added value. In any emergency response that you do, you learn from what you did and didn't do correctly. So there are some additives there to how do we improve our system within the province. And during that review, we've already implemented some of those actions into this year's response and planning for a wildfire. Look, most of that information will be in that review, and I suspect you're going to have it very shortly.
I recognize the Honourable Member for Halifax Needham.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Truly affordable housing in Halifax Needham is few and far between. Residents of the Wood Avenue and Seaview buildings have long been worried about the future of these units, most of which are rent geared to income. They live in constant fear of their affordable rents being raised above what they can afford. With so much affordable housing disappearing from our community already, they would likely not be able to find anywhere to go. We're now hearing that the land lease for these buildings has expired, and there may be soon some plans to sell these affordable buildings. Can the minister assure these residents that their buildings will not be sold? The Minister of Municipal Housing and Affairs.
I recognize the Honourable Minister for Municipal Affairs and Housing.
So, Madam Speaker, to the member, I can say that I'm not positive of which address she's talking about, but if it's a rent-geared to income building, that's one of ours. We don't sell public housing, as the member may know. We're building public housing first time in a generation, so we'll continue to build. So if it's a privately owned, obviously the owners of the building are able to sell if they choose to do. That's up to them.
I recognize the Honourable Member for Halifax Needham.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So 2 years ago, I wrote to the Department of Municipal Affairs and Housing, and it said it was contrary to your mandate to lose affordable housing units. In particular, the two that I had just spoken about were under that same umbrella, and they shared the desire to prevent any of these good people from losing their homes. So my understanding is that a group of 5 former co-op buildings in my riding, which provide 26 deeply affordable units, including Wood Avenue and Seaview, will be soon sold. These residents deserve answers and an assurance that they will not be displaced or face significant rental increases. Can the minister confirm whether or not there will be a sale and explain what the impact on residents will be?
I recognize the Honourable Minister for Municipal Affairs and Housing.
So, Madam Speaker, what I can say to the member is that we've made substantial investments in the past 2 years in co-ops. We continue to invest in co-ops, and we continue to invest in We have a nationally recognized program called Community Housing Acquisition Program, which we've used to add to co-ops and assist co-ops. So certainly I can't make specific assurances on the floor of the legislature without more details about those units, but I can tell this House that we've done a lot to lift the boat of community housing across the province. We've invested millions more, 30 million more through the Community Housing Acquisition Program in the last 2 years. We continue to invest in housing and in
I recognize the honourable member for Cole Harbour Dartmouth.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I've heard from concerned constituents about the changes to the Atlantic Province's Special Education Authority, better known as APSE, in their service delivery for children with vision loss. During the height of the pandemic, APSE initially paused the initial services for their students, including short-term programs, STP, and psychoeducational assessments. Now they introduced a new model emphasizing virtual learning and regional in-person meetings and gatherings. However, this has had negative implications for visually impaired and blind students. So my question to the Minister of Education, is the government working to reverse these changes to improve the education of students who need more support?
I recognize the Honourable Minister for Education.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to the member opposite for the question. So we know that APSE provides important and valuable services to our blind and visually impaired and deaf and hard of hearing students. And APSE is actually a cross-provincial organization that supports not only Nova Scotia students, but also students in the other Atlantic provinces as well. APSE has adjusted their service model over the last number of years, and I've spoken with prior APSE students and families about those changes to the service model. We're very interested in watching and making sure that that service model does continue to meet the needs of our students and our families. APSE has assured us that it will, but those changes are new, and we know that changes can bring concerns on the part of parents. So we can assure parents and families and students that we are monitoring and keeping in touch with APSE to ensure that they continue to deliver their excellent services. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the honourable member for Dartmouth Cole Harbour.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I continue to hear from people in my community who have family members who are blind, and that this has negatively impacted their learning and overall mental well-being. So my question to the Minister of Education, will the government re-implement the established standards and best practices for the students' education? And if APSE itself, the board, has representatives from the visually impaired?
I recognize the Honourable Minister for Education.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I just want to clarify for the member opposite, just so that she understands that the APSE is an independent organization, doesn't work directly under the direction of the Nova Scotia government. It is an Atlantic organization that provides Atlantic services. That being said, there are representatives from each of the provinces on the APSE board. We are watching with great interest. I also want to clarify, so the APSE services, they've moved from a more centralized model of providing residential service to a model that is more reflective of inclusive practices, which means the short-term programming is being offered now locally and in communities where people reside. So again, we understand that there are concerns. There always are with changes, and we're monitoring, and we look forward to seeing the results of those changes.
I recognize the honourable member for Bedford South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Over the last couple of weeks, I've been working with a constituent of mine, Madison Jablonski, who has been denied a rent supplement even though she pays well over 50% of her rent or of her income on rent. And the reason why is because the rent sup program is based not on the actual rent you pay, but the average market rent, which I think has some problems with it. As Madison said in an email to me, which she has agreed to share, the lady on the phone said we base it off the average market rent for your area. For Bedford, a two-bedroom is average $1,400. Madison says, please show me these two bedrooms for $1,400 because I can't find anything for less than $2,400 plus utilities. So I would like to ask the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, does he think average market rent is an accurate measure for this program?
I recognize the Honourable Minister for Municipal Affairs and Housing.
So I'd like to thank the member for that question. And what I can say to the member, Madam Speaker, is that the program is fundamentally a federal government program that we have adopted. We have We have made some changes. We do have some flexibility, but the average market rent portion of that is a federal government requirement, which comes from Statistics Canada and is for specific areas that don't always, you know, for us aren't always specifically one community. It's just how it's done. So we continue to adapt the program. We, as the member may know, one of the most significant changes we made in the program, I'll talk about my supplement.
I recognize the honourable member for Bedford South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I thank the minister for that. I will say I recognize there's a federal component to the program, but I believe strongly that the province needs to take the lead on this and look at a measure that is more accurate, because no matter whether you're talking about Bedford or any other part of this province, there can be substantial differences between average market rent and the rent that someone is actually paying. And as Madison said to me, and I'll table this, maybe this program needs to be revised as it's extremely inaccurate. It's completely unfair to say someone's denied because this is the average rent when it's very obviously not. How is that even allowed? So I would ask the minister, will the minister commit to looking at a new metric for this program so that less people like Madison are actually denied when they need help? Thank you.
I recognize the honourable minister for Municipal Affairs and Housing.
So, Madam Speaker, we have one of the most successful rent sub programs in the country that has one of the highest uptakes. If we look at our other provinces, I've said this before in the House, it was a 50-50 cost-shared program. We now are putting in approximately $50 million to the feds, about approximately $13 million. So we continue to invest in the program. I can assure all members of the House that the program is being constantly reevaluated. We're looking at the program all the time and how we can change the program or make it more it's extremely successful now. So we're very proud of the program. We realize it's extraordinarily important to Nova Scotians, and we recognize the stress in our province that causes the need for this program.
I recognize the honourable member for Cumberland North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I'd like to stand in my place today and add my concerns as well on behalf of the physicians in Cumberland North that have contacted me about the proposed changes to laws that will mandate the physicians to disclose personal health information to the minister and anyone acting on behalf of the minister. Madam Speaker, the relationship that a patient has with their physician or primary care provider or any care provider is sacred. It often takes people a long time to build up the courage to often share very personal things with their doctor. Newsflash, people don't trust politicians. People trust their doctors, though. And I'm wondering if the minister responsible will take a relook at this piece of legislation, go back, consult with physicians, and bring back something that respects the privacy of patients.
The Honourable Minister of Health and Wellness.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And certainly we will continue to have dialogue and discussion and formulate regulations in collaboration with Doctors Nova Scotia, as well as the College of Physicians and Surgeons. We want to protect people's personal health information. We are looking at aggregate data that will help us manage the system, and we are looking at ways in which those private physicians who have electronic medical records can contribute to helping us plan and develop the system, as well as provide access to patients across the province with their health care records.
The honourable member for Cumberland North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Protecting people's private health information does not involve disclosing it and mandating physicians to share that information with politicians. It's contradictory what the minister is saying with what this law, what they're proposing legislation. The fact is, Madam Speaker, the information that they need is already available through MSI billings. All of the billing codes, every day a physician sees a patient, whether it's a diabetic visit, hypertension, for psychological reasons, and also the time spent with the physician is there as well, if it's a 5-minute visit versus a 20-minute visit. So that information is available. This is an erosion of democracy, and this is not acceptable what the government is proposing. My question to the minister is, will she rethink what she is proposing and protect the personal information of patients in this province?
I recognize the Honourable Minister of Health and Wellness.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. There's so much that happens on the floor of this legislature under privilege that really is not appropriate for here. Fear-mongering and scaring people and telling them we're going to get into things that we shouldn't, when there are things shared on this floor that should never be shared. So what I would like to assure all members of this House, as well as Nova Scotians, there is no movement to erode the relationship with their physicians. We will care for and be so careful, robust regulations in place. I don't want people to be afraid of that. This is to improve the healthcare system that people have. This is to improve our ability to make a system that is more responsive to patients' needs and in order for patients to have access to their healthcare records.
I recognize the honourable member for Halifax Citadel Sable Island.
My question is for the Minister of Labour, Skills and Immigration. Our province will need 11,000 more tradespeople by 2030, and I'll table that. Women and gender diverse people are stepping up to meet this demand. However, a recent YWCA Halifax study shows that 90% of the 101 women and gender diverse tradespeople surveyed last year reported having experienced workplace harassment, and I'll table that. The YWCA is calling on this government to create a sector-specific, third-party, sexualized violence response team to ensure intersectional, trauma-informed, and timely response. Will the minister commit to establishing this much-needed response team to curtail gender-based workplace harassment in the trades?
I recognize the honourable minister for Labour, Skills and Immigration.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to the member opposite for raising this important question. And of course, the report was important work, and we know that there wasn't a lot of surprises in it. We know that sexual harassment is happening on the workplace, and we have to get to the bottom of it and make sure that we're putting every method we possibly can to prevent it, to make sure that women and gender diverse people are protected and safe on the job. And Madam Speaker, I know that that report had multiple recommendations for government, and we are going to look at them. And I'm happy to say that meeting with the YWCA to be able to discuss those recommendations, one of them which is already underway, doing consultations around the definition of harassment. So, Madam Speaker, to the member, yes, we're looking at these recommendations very thoroughly.
I recognize the honourable member for Halifax Citadel Sable Island.
Madam Speaker, 41% of respondents to the YWCA survey identified as members of the 2S LGBTQIA+ community. We know that harm is happening, and we know it's happening where people are trying to earn an income. We need to know more. More work needs to be done with community partners in Nova Scotia and nationally, like with Pride at Work, to fully understand how workplace sexual and gender-based harassment in the skilled trade sector is impacting the 2S LGBTQIA+ community. Can the minister assure us today that this government will work with 2S LGBTQIA+ community organizations to ensure welcoming and safe workplaces are achieved?
I recognize the honourable minister for Labour, Skills and Immigration.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to the member opposite for raising this important question. Of course, the answer is yes. We want to make sure that we're working with members of the 2S LGBTQ+ community to make sure that community members feel safe and protected at work. And this report is going to guide government with government recommendations, but I also know that the YWCA put in so much care by speaking to community partners that we also have to work with, Madam Speaker. So the answer is absolutely yes.
I recognize the honourable leader of the official opposition.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this government is forcing doctors to give personal health records digitally to the minister's office. This is happening after the largest cyber attack in Nova Scotia's history. Certainly the minister responsible for cybersecurity, his department, must have done a risk assessment and analysis of this decision. Could the minister please inform this House if his department has been consulted in this, if there's been a risk assessment done, and what the risks are to Nova Scotians' personal health records?
I recognize the honourable minister for Cybersecurity and Digital Solutions.
Sure. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I guess if the member opposite wants to talk about cyber responses, we can look back at the previous government's response to the FOIPOP breach, Madam Speaker. I think our record stands firm, and I'll defend my department's actions and our response on leading this cyber breach, Madam Speaker, not shying away at all from the magnitude of the breadth of this breach. It was a global global vulnerability, Madam Speaker, but we worked really hard to identify the risk, contained it, notified Nova Scotians, and guess what? Cyber risk is not going to go anywhere anytime soon, Madam Speaker. It is a real threat for all of us in this House, all Nova Scotians, and as a government, we're working hard to protect the information of Nova Scotians every single day.
The Leader of the Official Opposition.
So the answer is no. His department hasn't done a risk analysis on people's personalized health information, that nobody wants to be held ransom by bad actors. And that department hasn't even done a risk assessment on this, which has been made very clear by the minister's flippant response to this question. My question to the minister again, does he not think he has a responsibility when his government is telling doctors to give personal electronic health records to the minister's office after we've had the biggest cyber breach in Nova Scotian history? Does he not think his department actually has a responsibility to do a risk assessment of that so he can assure Nova Scotians that their personal health information isn't going to be in jeopardy because of bad actors?
I recognize the Honourable Minister for Cybersecurities and Digital Solutions.
Well, Madam Speaker, I'd say that work is underway. I think it's a bit rich for that rhetoric coming from the member opposite. We're on a journey of transforming the delivery of healthcare under the leadership of the Minister of Health and Wellness, something that the former Minister of Health and Wellness failed to do, Madam Speaker. He might want to shy away of how long he was Minister. The fact is he was Minister of Health of this province. Guess what, Madam Speaker? There's a lot of things in this province that have to change. That includes health and wellness, Madam Speaker. But again, if the minister wants to talk, the member opposite wants to talk about the boondoggle of response that they led for the cyber breach that they led, Madam Speaker, I'll go head to head and defend our action every single day.
I recognize the Honourable Member for Hammonds Plains, Lucasville.
Madam Speaker, in a September 23 report, there are 130 adults with special needs who remain on the IWK dentistry general anesthesia wait list, even though they have aged out of that facility. I asked the question in the last session in November. Extended wait times are currently sitting at over 2 years, Madam Speaker, for basic dental hygiene care. My question to the Minister of Health and Wellness: what is the update for patients, these more than 130 adults with special needs who require this type of dental care?
I recognize the Honourable Minister for Health and Wellness.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I thank the member for the question. So there's been a couple of things that have happened. So one of the things is we do have a contract with Scotia Surgery to be able to perform lower acuity dental procedures that require anesthetics outside of the IWK. And while that doesn't what it does is it frees up OR time in order for more complex cases to be done in that more acute environment. The other thing that was recently changed is through the dental tariff agreement. So we now are supporting dentists in doing sedation in their offices with the adequate training. So that will also help to reduce the wait list for other lower acuity procedures and free up OR time for the more complex.
I recognize the Honourable Member for Hammonds Plains, Lucasville.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Will the minister commit to producing, I guess, a 6-month report on whether or not those actions that she's just referenced are putting a dent into the wait list and looking after folks that do have acute needs?
I recognize the Honourable Minister for Health and Wellness.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I do want to give a shout out to the IWK because we know that there are a variety of communities who have people living with special needs who have aged out of IWK, but for a variety of reasons they do continue to provide complex care. I'm really grateful. So I know that IWK regularly keeps track of their...
Order. Question period has ended. It's 10:50, and I'll recognize the Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Would you please call government bills for second reading?
We now call government bills for second reading.
Would you please call Bill number 419, Financial Measures 2024 Act?
I will. Sorry. We'll now call Bill number 419, the Financial Measures Act, and I recognize the honourable member for Bedford South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and happy to speak for just a few more minutes on this this bill. I adjourned debate on this bill last night and said a lot of the things I wanted to say, but I just want to reinforce a few points. And the major point is that this bill is not your run-of-the-mill standard Financial Measures Act. It's an omnibus bill. It has a lot of things in it that require, I think, a lot of examination, a lot of debate, and they should be separated out. And I suspect that maybe the government kind of piled them all into this to avoid having to talk about these things individually and run the risk of bell ringings or delay tactics or whatever they think would have happened. But I believe that's what happened here. And if you look at the explanatory notes for the FMA, you'll see how odd some of it is. So let's say, for example, Clause 5 makes professional accountant a protected designation. That's kind of standard. That's standard FMA stuff. Basic, non-controversial housekeeping amendments. No problem there. But then if you go further on, you'll see here, add definitions of image, motor vehicle, and number plate. Okay, obviously nobody's going to have a major beef with that. But then we get into, really substantial clauses here that require a lot of debate, as we just heard in question period, which just ended a minute ago. Clause 110 amends the Personal Health Information Act to allow Cabinet to make regulations requiring personal health information to be disclosed for the purposes of planning and management of the health system, resource allocation, and creating or maintaining electronic health record programs and services. So I know the minister has spoken about this in question period already. Obviously, there's a disagreement between some of the sides of the House here on this, but the point is, something that is potentially as significant as this should not be buried in Clause 110 of the FMA. It should be a standalone amendment to the Personal Health Information Act so that all members of the House, and more importantly, as I said last night, members of the public are aware that this is happening and have the ability to make presentations to law amendments if they so choose, to write to law amendments, to write to MLAs, to write to the minister and say, I agree, I disagree, here's my points. Because we're not going to make informed decisions, I don't believe, on any side of the House when you have such significant changes at Clause 110 of the FMA. And again, there's two other ones I want to mention here. Schedule A, so not even in the FMA itself, a schedule to the FMA provides for the Professional Firefighters Volunteer Act. And as I said last night, as the Minister of Labor has indicated, there's going to be amendments coming to that, at-law amendments, I presume on Monday, most likely. So that shows that there was something that was unanticipated in this bill that the government recognizes needs to be changed. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think when the government realizes that there's been a mistake, it's incumbent on them to make amendments. That's fine. My issue is more so, as I said, having this as Schedule A of the FMA rather than a standalone bill. And it's not as if the legislative calendar is chock full in this session. We have 2 bills, plus the budget, plus the FMA. So I guess 4, if I'm being generous. And finally, Schedule B, the very, very end of the FMA. Schedule B provides for the Office of Children and Youth Act. Again, that's a big thing. I know that, Madam Speaker, in your past roles, you were talking about the importance of that. I know the current Minister of DCS and the former Minister of DCS, I'm sure, and many members on this side of the House, and of course, many, many members of the public, most particularly children and youth, who, it's our duty to make decisions on their behalf in many cases, but to do it in a way like this, where we are going to have very limited time to speak to that bill, and more importantly, when law amendments comes up, if we have a few hours, and we know that at the best of times, I think it's 10 minutes to present. If there's less than 8 presenters, I guess that's just arbitrary, but that's that's the rule. And we will have more than 8 presenters for the FMA, I'm sure, because it covers such a range of issues. And when we have more than 8 presenters at law amendments, they have 5 minutes to speak. And that's not a long time when you're talking about the importance of personal health information, when you're talking about issues around unions and professional versus volunteer firefighters, when you're talking about an Office of Children and Youth. 5 minutes goes by in a flash. And then as members, we have 5 minutes to ask questions, which again, is very, very limited. And if we had a more sensible law amendments process, that would be fine. If law amendments, ran over the course of 2 or 3 days maybe, and we had time to get all those people in, fine, I would have less concern. But we don't. That's not the way it works. We kind of rush through and get things done as quickly as possible. And so I think the FMA as written is far too broad, touches on far too many topics that are completely unrelated to the housekeeping financial measures that we see traditionally in FMA legislation. And I certainly hope that this is not a trend. Hopefully this is a one-time mistake, in my view, and when we're doing this again in a year's time, I hope that the FMA is what it is intended to be, which is essentially an instrument to allow the budget to pass and to make necessary but inconsequential amendments like defining what a license plate is and changing references and numbers of bills and so on. That's what it should be. That's not what it is this year, and that is the reason why I have concerns with it. And with that, Madam Speaker, I will take my seat. Thank you.
I recognize the honourable member for Cumberland North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today to speak in second reading to the FMA. Madam Speaker, there's a lot in this bill, and I will do my best to address any of the concerns on behalf of the people of Cumberland North. And I'm going to start, Madam Speaker, with the issue around disclosing and mandating healthcare professionals to disclose their personal health information. And when I brought it up in question period, the ministers called me fear-mongering, said that I was fear-mongering and scaring people, which is quite an accusation to make here in this House. I have a responsibility as MLA to bring forth the concerns and the voices of the people I represent, and patients and doctors do not think that people's personal health information should be disclosed to the minister. And if the minister doesn't like that, I make no apologies. My job is to bring the concerns of the people to this House. I do not believe that I was fear-mongering and trying to scare people. My attempt, Madam Speaker, was to make sure the minister is aware of what physicians are saying in my community. That is important and that is valid. There's no question that this province should move forward with electronic medical records and personal health records and allowing patients to have access to their personal health information. This is attainable, Madam Speaker, without the government having access to people's individual personal health information. When physicians see their patients, they have to submit billings and they have to code it with what are the diagnoses. They also have to share if they spend more than the normal allocated time for an office visit. So if someone goes to see their physician, maybe they're going through a divorce, they're going through some situational depression, and the doctor spends 45 minutes with that patient, then it gets billed as a psychotherapy, and that is recorded through the MSI billings. If the person goes in for a vaccination, and it's a 10-minute visit. That is recorded. There's a diagnosis put in through the MSI billings. If the Department of Health need information of what are the diagnoses of the patients here in this province to be able to allocate resources for spending, that information is already attainable for them, for the department. They do not need to have access to dig into people's personal health information. I've been a registered nurse now since 1991, and I worked in family practice for many of those years. And I can tell you, and most people in this room, I'm sure, are already aware of it, when people come to see their physician, they're not coming for good reasons usually. They're usually coming because they're under a great deal of duress for either physical, emotional, spiritual, mental, or emotional needs. And it often takes time for that relationship to build with their physician, to disclose or to ask questions about some of those very personal and private things. It's a very sacred relationship that patients have with their physician. And to think that a politician is going to have access to that information is very concerning. And I've had experiences in the past in my professional work as a nurse where personal health information records have been breached. And it has caused great anxiety. In fact, I had some patients in other parts of the province that refused to go back to a clinic after their personal health information was breached. It's a very, very serious matter. I also have concerns about the Premier's office and having access to people's personal health information, because what this bill says is the minister or anyone else designated. And we know how closely tied the Premier's office is with every department, and whenever there's FOIPOPs done asking departments about the trace of communication between the Premier's office and that department on an issue, people get back blank pages citing solicitor-client privilege because the Chief of Staff is the Premier's personal lawyer, I guess. So that causes great concerns, Mr. Speaker. And I'm not fear-mongering, and I think that it was very disrespectful for that to be shared here in this House. People have a right to know what laws are being passed in this province that affect them directly. And when someone goes to their physician and talks about very private matters, they should know that that information is going to be kept confidential. Confidentiality is a core tenet as a healthcare professional. Core. And when that trust is broken, it is very damaging. And when we talk about being transformative and changing our healthcare system for the better, taking away people's rights to privacy with their physician and allowing that personal health information to be disclosed is absolutely going in the wrong direction. It is a violation to people's rights. It is an erosion to democracy. Yesterday, on a different topic but related, I heard the Premier talk about, or him defend the lack of bringing appropriations, extra spending here into the legislature. And the Premier's response to the criticism was he can do whatever he wants, and that he is sharing the information with the public through press releases and communication. But that's not democracy. That's not responsible government. That is not part of parliamentary democracy. Parliamentary democracy, which we are supposed to be doing here in Nova Scotia, involves bringing all budget spending to the legislative branch of government. That is in this House, so that all 55 MLAs have a chance and an opportunity to look at the spending, whether it's before or after the money's been spent, and provide feedback based on what the people that they represent think. That's parliamentary democracy. And we're the only province in all of Canada that basically the majority government has a blank check and can spend and do however they desire and not bring it back to the legislative branch of government to be debated, to be discussed, to provide transparency for the people of Nova Scotia so they know how their tax dollars are being spent. And I believe it's an abuse of power. I believe, Mr. Speaker, it's one of the downsides of a majority government. I know that whenever some government is trying to get elected, they want to have a majority so they can put through whatever they want. But it should be done ethically and responsibly, using parliamentary democracies, the principles of parliamentary democracy, which is bringing everything here in this House and bringing it to the legislative branch of government. And by not doing that, it is an abuse of power. And having power is a privilege. It should not be abused, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm going to speak more directly to pieces of the Financial Measures Act. As others have shared here in opposition, one of the biggest concerns with this bill is the fact that it has so many amendments from other pieces of legislation sort of all dumped into this bill as an omnibus bill. Again, kind of reflecting a similar pattern of an erosion of democracy. Or lack of transparency, I guess, is a better way of describing it. Why was this bill presented in this way? The first act amended is the CPA Act. Why was the CPA Act not brought to this legislature as an amended act and debated on individually? Now, some of these amendments are housekeeping, and I understand that. And the CPA Act is one of those. The Consumer Protection Act as well. It's a good piece of legislation, good amendment, making sure that there is enhanced consumer transparency and protection regarding lending practices. That's a positive thing, good to see, but again, does it belong in a Financial Measures Act? The fisheries and coastal resources, I agree with some of my other colleagues here that that should also have not be part of a Financial Measures Act. That should be in its own piece of legislation. It's a very important topic here that's been discussed in the legislature. There has been some concerns brought forward by stakeholders that what we're putting forth in legislation should be realistic. It should be something that when it's brought before a judge in a court will hold up. And there's some concerns that what this bill is proposing would not hold up in court. And what's been proposed is that there is a lower fine and then maybe a tiered approach. Because if you look at precedent and what judges have decided in the past, judges have said that the fines are too high to start. But if someone continues to break the law and puts fines in place, then yes, to maybe go up. So we need to always be looking at whatever legislation we're putting in place here in this House needs to be well thought out, well researched, well consulted, and make sure that it will hold up in the court of law. And there has been some concerns that this particular amendment to the Fisheries and Coastal Resources Act would not do so. Gaming Control Act is also, again, a housekeeping item. And we have gypsum mining, HRM bridges, very important piece of legislation there. MOU to the municipal amendments to the HRM municipality charter. Also should have been brought forward as its own individual bill, piece of legislation. And then we have amendments to the Highway 104 Western Alignment Act. And this is a bill this is a piece of legislation that I have certainly spoken to at length here in this legislature since first being elected in 2017. And because the Cobequid tolls dramatically caused harm to the people that I represent in Cumberland North and all of Cumberland County. And I was very pleased to see the Premier remove the tolls for Nova Scotia residents that have a licensed vehicle, registered vehicle here in the province. But honestly, I believe the whole Cobequid toll plaza should be removed. And the reason for that, Mr. Speaker, is because it is a physical and it's a barrier for the people in our area. And the people in Cumberland feel like one of the things you'll hear very regularly if you spend any amount of time in Cumberland is that they feel that Nova Scotia ends at the tolls. And it's a landmark that people would like to see gone. I know that there is some positive revenue coming into the province because of the tolls that are there. But if you look at the concept of maritime collaboration and working together with our maritime provinces, there may be some consideration, Mr. Speaker, to removing that toll. And I think it is important. I haven't had an opportunity. I've printed out the financial statements for last year, but I haven't had a chance to actually analyze them really closely. But to actually see how much revenue is the province actually realizing from that toll plaza. So based on this piece of legislation, this amendment to the Western Alignment Act, I'm assuming that means the province is planning on keeping the tolls there forever. And if you look at or not removing them as per the legislation, which states after 30 years the tolls are to be removed, that's was in legislation, so I'm assuming that's not clear in this, but I'm assuming that means that they're not planning on removing them at that 30-year point. The income tax amendments, this is something that's very important to the people of Nova Scotia, and it's something that I had proposed on behalf of the people of Cumberland North, and that is to index the income tax brackets. It's a little, I would say, the way that it's been communicated to the public has not been maybe forthright, and every other province in Canada has been indexing their income tax brackets, and I think most Nova Scotians didn't realize that as inflation has gone up, that their income tax brackets were not also going up. So it was kind of a hidden tax for people. And the fact that we're now going to be doing what every other province in the country is doing is just what is the ethical and responsible thing to do. The one thing that's not included in this bill and in the budget that should have been is also increasing the basic personal tax exemption. We have the lowest in the country, meaning that our people here in Nova Scotia pay income tax before anyone else in the country. So our lowest income earners are paying income tax before anyone else in the country. We have the lowest. Alberta has the highest. Mr. Speaker, I believe Nova Scotia should be somewhere in the middle. We should be looking at, if we're paying around $9,000, our basic personal tax exemption, and Alberta's, theirs is around $20,000, we need to be looking at that, and many experts, including or organizations, including the Halifax Chamber of Commerce, in their pre-budget submission to the minister, had recommended increasing it, I believe, up to around $15,000. And many stakeholders believe it needs to be at least 12 or higher. Most people believe that taxpayers should be able to keep as much of their tax dollars as possible, and I certainly support that as well. And we're looking at healthcare in this province. One of the biggest indicators and determinants of health is income. And when people don't have enough money to pay their rent, pay their mortgage, buy their groceries, and take care of themselves, you're going to see a decline in health. And a lot of times you also see an increase in suicide rates as well as people are under financial pressures. So I am pleased to see this in the Financial Measures Act and in the budget, indexing our income tax brackets, but it didn't go far enough. We need to also increase the basic personal tax exemption. There's other tax changes that I would have liked to seen in this budget and in this bill, including removing tax on tax. I fully support removing the carbon tax. That's a federal responsibility. But I also think that this government could be doing more by removing the HST or giving some sort of tax release to Nova Scotians, considering all of the extra revenue that they have realized from the HST that's been charged on the carbon tax, as well as the increased fuel prices. And when we called on, myself personally and other opposition MLAs, called on this government to provide some tax relief for fuel in this province, it was not answered and was not done. So that is something that is very real. The people of this province are paying tax on tax. It's philosophically, fundamentally wrong. They should not be being charged tax on tax. When you look at the price of fuel that people are paying at the pumps for diesel, gasoline, there's the basic commodity fuel price, and then on top of that, there's the federal excise tax, 10 cents per liter, provincial motive fuel tax, 15.5 cents per liter, a transportation fee, depending on where you live in the province, now the carbon tax, and then you have the surcharge that the retailers can put on, and then another 15% on top of that. So, Mr. Speaker, people are paying HST 15% on top of their carbon tax, federal excise fuel tax, and provincial motive fuel tax, tax on tax. That is fundamentally wrong and should be changed. I've also called on this government to remove tax on used vehicles. This is something that members opposite have advocated for themselves. I'm surprised that the government have not brought this forward yet in their mandate, and I'm hoping that this is something that we will see in the future. The people that suffer the most from having to pay sales tax on used vehicles are mostly those in lower economic levels, socioeconomic levels, and we're harming those, Mr. Speaker, by continuing to have this tax grab on used sales vehicles. Moving on to FMA, we also have another amendment to the Pensions Benefit Act included in this omnibus bill. And then, of course, the Personal Health Information Act, which I have already spoken to. And just again, this bill is mandating, because this is the word in the bill, Mr. Speaker, this bill, this amendment to the Personal Health Information Act is mandating custodians, so that would be if you have an EMR record, if you're a family physician or a specialist, and you have an electronic medical record or a paper file, this bill mandates you to disclose personal health information to the minister or designated individuals acting on behalf of the minister. So when the minister accuses me of fear-mongering and trying to scare people, I think that shouldn't have been allowed, first of all. But I just want to clarify that the purpose of me making sure that the people in Nova Scotia understand what laws are going to be passed here in this legislature. Now, hopefully, the government will listen to the stakeholders, listen to the physicians that have concerns, listen to us opposition MLAs that are bringing the concerns forth on behalf of the people we represent. That matters. That's democracy. But again, this bill, just in case anyone here in the government MLAs have not read it themselves, this amendment says they mandates custodians, which would be physicians, to disclose personal health information. It's not needed. If the department needs to know how many people in the province have a diagnosis of diabetes or hypertension or COPD or shingles, any kind of information like that, Mr. Speaker, that's already available through MSI billings. They do not need to have access to my or anyone else's personal health information. And something that's not included in this bill is this retroactive? So if the government does pass this, if they don't make any amendments, will this give the government access to my previous and patients' previous medical files from 20 years ago, or will it be from present day going forward? It's a very big concern, and I think that the government needs to take a closer look at this. It's important that we protect people's privacy, Mr. Speaker, in this province. I'm sure we're going to see lots of amendments come forward in Committee of the House on this bill, and there'll be lots more to say at that time and in third reading. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I recognize the honourable member, City Member 2.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm only going to take a few minutes here. I just want to make a few points. There'll be other opportunities to talk about this as the bill moves forward. But you know, just a couple of points I want to make before I get into actually my critical role. And you know, you've heard a number of speakers get up and talk about, you know, a bill like this that has so many different components in it. When you're looking at multiple departments, you're looking at multiple ministries that in some way, shape, or form are in this, which is very unusual, the process for doing it. And what we're starting to see is things are starting to get pulled out of it. We saw the fire department stuff pulled out of it. We saw that pulled out of it. Now we're into a big debate, and rightfully so, on protecting people's personal information. And you now have doctors coming forward. You have other individuals involved in the medical community, Mr. Speaker, coming forward saying that they weren't consulted. We heard in question period that the minister responsible for cybersecurity hasn't done any kind of planning around this, hasn't done a risk assessment of what that means. To start compiling this information, and as we know, we've seen the largest cyber breach in the history of the province. So it's interesting because this is what happens when you do this. This is what happens when you put all these components from different departments and ministries in one bill. Problems start to arise, and we're seeing it. Fire. It's the start. I feel like this information is there. Oh, I see someone in the gallery, Mr. Speaker, but I'm going to ask for an intro from my leader.
Just a reminder that you're to speak to the speaker, not allowed to recognize or people in the gallery. Just procedural thing. I'm sorry. I recognize the honourable member, City Member 2.
So, Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition would like to do an intro. That's why I was sitting down. I don't know if you can do it while I'm speaking. Sorry if I can. Oh, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah, that's... Yes, sir. See what he does? So do I continue, Mr. Speaker? Just continue?
Yeah, continue on, please. Recognize the honourable member, City Member 2.
Even distracting from the gallery like you used to be. As I said, I'm going to take a few minutes and just go over this very quickly. And as I was saying, this is what happens when you do this. This is what happens when you lump multiple departments and ministries within one bill. Due diligence isn't done. The government's, you know, they're taking things that are good, putting them in these bills, putting them in this bill, which we support, but also you're starting to see problems arise. We saw it with the fire department and the volunteer issue being pulled from the bill after it was implemented. Now you're into a big debate on health information. That is in the bill. And I suspect that conversation isn't going to end today. There's some major concerns coming from the medical community around access to information, the protection of information from a government who oversaw the largest cybersecurity attack in history. And with no risk assessment, as my leader talked about in question period, no risk assessment done, no kind of analysis around how the information is going to be protected. And that's a huge concern for everyone. And governments change. And the member from Cumberland said it too. People have a level of mistrust in the elected body. And you know, I say to myself, I had the opportunity to serve in cabinet in other aspects. I wouldn't want to have that information. That's not right. You know what I mean? Like as my leader said, you can get that through billing codes. You can get that in other ways. You can get that data in other ways. You don't need to have access as an elected representative to people's personal information. And as the member from Cumberland said, not only the person in the department, and you know, we have a current minister, the member from Antigonish who's the minister. There was the previous minister was from Antigonish, and you know, good people trying to do the right thing, but you're opening that door to the event that somebody uses that information incorrectly. So why would the government want to do that? Like, why do you want to go down that path when there are other ways to access that information? And the point being, in the FMA, this is in there. And as we know today, no risk assessment was done, no analysis was done. There is no real strong argument to collect this information. And I suspect this is going to be the top. Oh, we have medical professionals and doctors coming forward with major concerns. And I suspect that this conversation is far from over. So, a couple of aspects about it. And the other thing, so in the FMA, it also talks about gypsum, which is great, because I'll say this. I think I know what, and I believe I know what it's for. And I will say this, the member from Victoria Lakes would understand this. There's a great new opportunity that is kind of reborn in the mining community in Cape Breton around gypsum. And that company's reopening. I know that company very well in Iona. I was in my previous life, when I wasn't a politician, I ran a business, and they were a primary customer of mine. They put a lot of food on the table for suppliers. They put a lot of food on the table for the people who are mining there. That is a huge opportunity for that community, and I wish whoever's involved, I had the honor of being the Minister of Mines for 3 years, good people in that department. That is a great opportunity for the province. Very strong social license in the community for that mine. They were excellent, and they continue to be. A lot of the same people are involved with that, Mr. Speaker. They were excellent to the community. I'm sure they will continue to be, it shows that mining there's still lots of potential for mining and mineral resource development in the province. So I wish everyone in Iona and all the very best. A lot of jobs are going to come to the community. It's excellent for the economy. But the reason why I wanted to get up for a few minutes, I'm going to go to my critic roles, and we talk about the youth advocate in the office. And I had the opportunity to ask questions or estimates yesterday. And when you're asked, when you're developing something as important as this, and something we all support, you have to be able to at least give me a sense of what it's going to cost. And I didn't get that yesterday. I asked specific questions around what that office would be and what the advocate would look like and what the staffing component would be and all of these things, and I got a very long answer of really nothing. And that's unfortunate, because this is something that we should be all celebrating. We want to do whatever we can to support and advocate for our kids. And when the minister gets up and doesn't provide a single cent or really any direction of what the office is doing, he's like, stay tuned, buckle up. It's like, that's not good enough. So that is something, I don't understand why that would be in here with no information. Why wouldn't that be something separate? Like, that should be something that you should celebrate. It'd be almost like, you know what I mean? Like, it'd be almost like they're different, but, you know, similar, I guess, sense, like, when you're rolling out, like, a pre-primary program, you're rolling out childcare, you're rolling out these important aspects of bills. Why we would never lump that into a bill that has a multitude of other departments within it. This is an important office that everyone supports, and I wish the government the full success in doing it. It's important for our kids. But when the minister gets up and offers nothing, any kind of background on what the office is or what it's meant to be, I'm sitting there going, why is this in the FMA? Like you can't, again, you had the fire information and decisions in the FMA removed. You have massive discussion now on protection of people's personal information. That's now a huge debate. I ask about this office for the youth advocate. no information coming forward on it. And it's like, no wonder we have questions, right? No wonder the general public has questions, that they're starting to question this bill. I don't get it. These are things you should be celebrating, not putting in one document. I just don't understand. So I guess the point I was trying to make, and I'm going to stop for now. We'll have lots more to say. The bill, I just don't understand. There are aspects of this bill that I would want to put out there front and center. This is one of them. The advocate. Why it would land in the FMA under a pile of other legislation, I don't understand. And I'll also finish with what I started with. You're starting to see the holes in this bill. The fire was the first. Now you have the personal information. What else are we going to find out in this as we go? There's no information on many of the things that are in here. For our youth advocate, there's no information there. And I think we're just going to continue to find problem after problem as we go through this. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I recognize the Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I beg leave to make an introduction.
Please do.
Thank you very much. I'd like to bring the House's attention to the Speaker's Gallery. We are joined by a great friend of this chamber who served, I believe, as the MLA for Argyll for 15 years, a former health minister, Minister of Community Services, I'm sure other portfolios as well. Currently is the Deputy Speaker of the House of Commons in Ottawa, and most importantly, my Member of Parliament from West Nova, the very liberally minded conservative, the Honourable Chris D'Entremont.
Welcome back to the House. Enjoy your stay. I recognize the Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'm very happy to stand and speak to the Financial Measures Act, which is, of course, the legislation that accompanies the budget of the province. I do think there is a lot of things to be concerned about in this budget that my honourable colleague from Sydney spoke to. I want to expand on some of those concerns. We have an incredible affordability issue in this province. This is literally a crisis for hundreds of thousands of Nova Scotians. Nova Scotia has gone from being one of the most affordable places to live in Canada to one of the most expensive in the last 2 years under this government. And yes, there has been global inflation. There have been macro factors that have impacted affordability here, but there has also been some policies that we are seeing to continue under this government that are also going to continue to impact the cost of living for Nova Scotians. I want to address first the item that we have certainly fought for in the opposition benches, and I'm certainly happy that the government has moved forward with that. And it is indexing income tax to inflation, trying to eliminate bracket creep in Nova Scotia. This is something that the Liberal caucus has been the sole champion of for a number of years until recently. It's been such a good idea that our honourable colleagues in the NDP have started talking about this, and the government has actually included it in their budget. However, we have to point out that while this is a helpful move to protect people from being taxed more as a result of inflation, it is not a massive tax cut as the Premier has pretended it is. What this does for Nova Scotians is ensure that as inflation goes up, you're not being impacted by bracket creep, and that your tax brackets are being adjusted with inflation, so that if inflation's going up and you're being pushed into another tax bracket, this should potentially help protect you from that. However, it's important that Nova Scotians know the actual financial impact of this legislation. Alone, again, trumpeted by the Premier as the largest tax cut in the province's history, is going to save Nova Scotians, depending on their level of income, between $59 and $259 a year. This is what the Premier has trumpeted as the largest tax cut in our province's history. and has certainly been beating his chest about. This is not enough to deal with the massive affordability crisis that people are experiencing. It does not make Nova Scotia's taxes more competitive overall in the province, because not only, Madam Speaker, have we seen in Nova Scotia the highest increases to rental costs, the highest increases to housing in the country. People have been hit with increased property tax over this last year. We've had increases, obviously, to the housing market, which is preventing younger people and even working families get into the housing market to begin with. We've had power rates go up by 14% under this government, despite the fact that they promised that that wouldn't happen. Saving in 2025, $59 to $259 a year is not going to address all these cost pressures that are smothering people financially, that are creating a lot of stress amongst not just the most financially vulnerable and those on the low-income side of the equation, but on working class people, families that have two incomes coming in, who are trying to do the best for their kids, who are trying to put them in sports, who are trying to get them in recreational programs, who might be supporting their senior parents, making house payments, making tax payments. This does not go far enough to make Nova Scotia an affordable jurisdiction from a tax perspective. We still have the highest taxes in the country in a regressive fashion, taxing things that we want people to do. We want people to be more productive. So we have, and in this province, we tax income at the highest level in the country. We need people to be consumers, and we have the highest sales tax in the country. We want people to buy homes and invest in them, and they get penalized for that because of the property tax regime. Certainly, protecting people from inflation and income tax is a decent start, but does not go far enough to make this province more competitive from a tax perspective or more affordable for Nova Scotians. This is why our party continues to advocate for a cut to the HST. We actually have the money to do this right now. We have had a windfall. This government has had a windfall of revenue, unlike we have ever seen before, at least in living memory. Revenue coming from the federal government, which this party, will still attack every chance that they get. But most of that revenue is coming from increased taxes. Each Nova Scotian is paying more in taxes, and as inflation has gone up, cost of things go up, sales tax goes up. That is driving more revenue into the provincial treasury, and the government has been blowing that money, in my opinion. And not just in my opinion, but also according to the opinion of the Auditor General and many people in Nova Scotia who actually believe in managing the finances responsibly as a province, which is certainly something that I care about. It's certainly something I think that matters for the younger generation of Nova Scotians coming up, that matters for my kids, what I hope to have, my grandkids I hope to have one day, and all those next generation of Nova Scotians that are either moving here or being born here. And this government is throwing that future in jeopardy by incredible reckless spending, where even according to the Auditor General, we are not seeing value for money on. We are not seeing a reverse in the negative trends of healthcare. In fact, we have seen the stats that matter in healthcare, from how many people have a family doctor to how ill people are, to how many deaths we're seeing in our emergency rooms, to the wait times for specialists, MRIs, for ambulances, for getting patients from ambulances into emergency rooms. All of these things are getting exponentially worse, 2 to 3 times worse under this government, despite the fact it's spending billions of dollars more. And again, we have a government that brags about how much they're spending, and we do not see a return of value for Nova Scotians. We do not see the improvements that people expect and need in our healthcare system, like getting a family doctor, like having lower wait times, like saving more people in our emergency rooms instead of losing more people. These are the things that matter to people. And again, for all the chest beating and bat packing that happens in here, or back padding, I should say, and all the money that's being spent, we are not seeing a reverse of those trends. And I believe it was John Hamm, who was fiscally responsible, who did care about the taxpayers' money, who didn't waste money for the sake of capturing headlines and driving a media cycle. He said, we're going to keep spending more money in healthcare and the situation is going to go worse until we change how we're doing business with healthcare. And that certainly is not happening. I'm very concerned about the lack of support for the most financially vulnerable in this province. We have a homelessness crisis, we have a poverty crisis, we have a food security crisis. All of these statistics are getting worse, and people's lived experiences are getting worse. We have now 1/3 of our food bank visits being children and youth in this province. I've met with food banks. We've met with Feed Nova Scotia. The demand on their services, again, just to get people the necessities of life with food, is getting worse and worse and worse. Food insecurity has drastically increased under this government. I am very happy that there is a lunch program announced in this budget. Again, something we have been fighting for on this side of the House for 2 years, something we did commit to previously during our years in government. And I am thankful that that is in, because this will help feed our children and our youth in our schools if it is implemented correctly and if we can get this in place. But again, we are still freezing income assistance for the 3rd year in a row. The most financially vulnerable at a time when cost of living is shooting through the roof, putting pressure on working families and working class and middle class people. Think of what this is doing to our constituents who are barely making ends meet. Freezing income assistance again for the 3rd year in a row when we are seeing the highest inflationary cost increases in many respects in the whole country. And again, this government turns a blind eye to this issue and does not have a plan to address poverty. And as a result, poverty rates are increasing in Nova Scotia. I'm very fearful that those individuals and families that are dependent on social assistance right now, again, to survive, because of this government's inaction and lack of compassion for them, are going to be trapped in intergenerational poverty. They are not going to be able to escape the dependency on this system, because costs are going up 20% in some respects for rent and housing, and 8 to 15% in food, 14% in power, and these folks are making less and less and less. And if this government does not think that financial insecurity, that food insecurity, and that housing insecurity does not have an impact on health outcomes and pressures on our healthcare system, then they are not talking to doctors, then they are not paying attention to those social and economic determinants of health that statistically are there and present in the data that the government itself is collecting. And this is a major blind spot to this government, and we are going to have, again, some families and individuals in this province that are going to suffer for generations because of this government's lack of compassion and care for poverty and food insecurity. We also have, during a housing crisis, when we've literally run out of homes and rooms for people, we have a cut to the housing budget by a significant amount. And again, this is coming off a previous session where the only thing this government was talking about was housing. We're going to fix housing. We're going to fix housing. Look at all the actions we're taking. And I mean, the proof is in the pudding in the budget. A cut to the housing budget when we're in a housing crisis. Homelessness has doubled under this government. People literally died on the streets this winter. This government promised they were going to get shelters in place by mid-December. We are now almost April. There's been 19 of those 200 shelters that have been put in place. And we have department staff from community services telling us that they probably won't even be in place until next year. The homelessness situation is probably going to be worse next year. And again, there are actions that this government is taking that they cannot blame on other levels, orders of government or other stakeholders. It's their responsibility. They have cut eligibility for rent supplements at a time when rents have gone up more in Nova Scotia than anywhere else in the country. So now you have to be paying at least 50% of your income in your rent to qualify. I do think that is a consequential decision that is increasing housing insecurity in this province, and that is making life more untenable for hundreds, if not thousands, of Nova Scotians. They have frozen income assistance, as I've mentioned before. They have cut back at a time when, for the first time in a decade, power rates are shooting through the roof again, up to 14%. They've cut back on energy rebate programs for the most financially vulnerable in our province. These are decisions that have consequences in people's lives. These are decisions that have impacts on the future of this province and people's ability to live and thrive here, let alone survive. And the government takes no responsibility for it. Again, don't you know we're making the biggest tax cut in Nova Scotia history of $59 to $259 a year? It's not going to cut it. Other concerns I have about the FMA is the amount of non-budget related items that are being bunched into this omnibus bill that aren't even necessarily related to the budget, that also have implications for Nova Scotians. This is a clear example of how this government operates. They do try to conceal things. Big consequential decisions are concealed in omnibus pieces of legislation to try and keep the media, the opposition, and the public unaware and quiet on these issues. This government's fundamental motivation as a government is to control perception of what people are saying about them. I mean, that's become so clear at every level, from healthcare to how they approach legislation in this House. The Premier answers one question a day from each opposition leader. Right? He's accumulated more power than probably any other Premier on record in this province, and he answers less questions than anybody that's come before him. This government said they ran on transparency and accountability. They are not transparent as a government. Again, an example would be concealing the fact that they are mandating doctors through law, through this law, the Financial Measures Act. Again, what's the relation? Someone should probably stand up and try to explain this. But in the Financial Measures Act is hidden a piece of law that mandates doctors to give electronic medical personal records of their patients to specifically the Minister of Health or a designate. This is in the Financial Measures Act. We heard in question period today the minister responsible for cybersecurity, who was minister during the biggest cybersecurity breach in this province's history, 100,000 staff, including MLAs in this chamber. Our personal data and information, including our social insurance numbers, were hacked and taken by bad actors. His department has not even looked at the risks associated with forcing every single doctor without patient consent to give their personalized health care information to the minister. According to doctors, including doctors, Dr. O'Dane, representing Doctors Nova Scotia, doctors that we've heard from privately, this is creating a major safety risk for patients. And again, no thought even given to making this contingent on the patient's consent or the doctor's consent. It is mandated through law, hidden in the Financial Measures Act. This is not a government that demonstrates transparency and accountability, or even a desire to be forthright about some serious consequential decisions they're making that are impacting Nova Scotian lives, and in this particular case, their personal health records. And overall, I will say, because I don't want to speak too long on this bill, I know other members want to speak to it. Another major concern I have about this budget Again, I will say there's items in this budget that I support, because I know the government will try to say we voted against things that we advocated for. And I mean, I do have to point out that the best ideas in this budget have come from the opposition. I have to say it's both opposition parties. I do have to say it is quite flattering to have a majority government that does seem very obsessed with what the opposition is doing. And if people don't believe me, they just need to watch Question Period every day. And I would say 50 to 70% of the government response on serious questions affecting Nova Scotians' health and lives and affordability is what? Commentary on the Liberal Party, the official opposition, and the times we had in government. The best ideas in this budget have come from the opposition. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it is very odd that the government doesn't give credit for where some of these ideas are coming from. They're very quick to take ideas or take credit for decisions made by a previous government, and in the same breath tell this House that the previous government didn't do anything. It is a display of character and approach to politics that has become, I think, very much a part of the modus operandi of the PCs in Nova Scotia, and is different from how previous governments conducted themselves in this chamber and beyond. But I will say one thing that the previous government and previous Liberal governments in Nova Scotia did care about was how much money is being spent. There was and has been and continues to be on this side of the House in our party a very real concern for the financial future of this province, for the responsible use of taxpayers' money. And this is a responsibility that this government has just blown to the wind. They do not care how much money is being spent, so long as it continues to create perception that they're doing one of their numerous slogans that they spend taxpayers' money promoting, by the way, as well. We are driving debt up in this province. They are running deficits, again, at a time when we have more revenues than ever before. They are not achieving value for money based on results, no matter if you're looking at the affordability crisis affecting people, whether it's support for the most financially vulnerable and those Nova Scotians that are dealing with low incomes, or whether it's in health care. And again, there's very clear examples of this government burning hundreds of millions of dollars with no thought for the morrow, no thought for the impact on Nova Scotians other than the headline that they're going to get out of it. And we've got very clear examples of that have been outlined by the Auditor General and have been talked about by this party. $464 million for a nursing and healthcare recruitment and retention bonus. $464 million. We were told we'd get 2,000 nurses back to the system as a result of that, and that we would recruit more paramedics. We got 148 nurses back as a result of that massive spend into the system, and one net new paramedic over the last year. It's not just about money. And that's the big problem I have with how this government handles the public's money, is they think that's what's going to fix everything. So let's get it out the door. More money out the door, faster, even if there's not a return on investment, even if it's not going to have an impact. The Auditor General told us in just the $500 million that she looked at, the government did not do any due diligence in assessing whether there was even a need for these massive investments. And again, why this is important to Nova Scotians is because at a time when we could actually become more competitive from a tax perspective, where we could deal with the overarching debt problem that this province has had, when we could be positioning ourselves to set our kids and our grandkids and the future of this province up for success, this government is not taking any consideration of that, because they only care about whenever the election comes. They care about re-election. And I mean that, again, if you don't believe me, if Nova Scotians are watching and don't believe me, they just have to watch the Premier's responses to questions every single day. And when the Premier's in the chamber, we have to also watch the responses of the ministers. I will say when the Premier's not in the chamber, we do get better responses from the ministers, though. And that was made very clear today. But my overall concern with this budget, again, to conclude,
Order. Just a friendly reminder to the Leader of the Official Opposition that you're not to make reference to anyone's absence or attendance within the chamber. Thank you. I recognize the Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And all I will say is it was nice and refreshing, for the most part, to get more complete responses today that were more focused on answering some of the questions. So we have a Freedom of Information, or a Financial Measures Act here that spends billions more with no thought for what the return on that investment is going to be, despite trumpeting this as something that's going to have a major impact on affordability for Nova Scotians. It won't, and that's going to become clearer and clearer as the days and weeks and months pass. Well, there are specific things in this budget that we do support. I am very concerned about the cuts to housing, the freezing of income assistance, not seeing enough on making life more affordable for working class, middle class people. Nothing in this budget that's going to help the young people coming up in this province to buy a home or find housing. And a budget that is also continuing on with this government's record of reckless spending without any thought for the impact that that's going to have on future generations. And I have to point out one more thing. At the heart of the revenue projections in this budget too is this government's focus on continuing to try to double our population aggressively without a plan to accommodate that population growth. We do not see a plan in here to increase infrastructure. We have a cut to a housing budget. And again, the government is dependent on revenues of population growth that's going to see us doubling in, I believe, the next 2 decades. That is going to also create, if we're not responsible with how we look at population growth in this province, if we don't have a plan to accommodate that growth, that is going to also create more problems around inflation, cost of living, housing shortages, homelessness, and lack of access to health care and government services moving in the future. And so my plea to the government is, you won the last election. You've got to govern now. These decisions really matter. They're consequential not just for the present moment, but for the future. And I hope that that government starts taking that responsibility seriously. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the Honourable Member for Annapolis.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I'm also happy to stand and say a few words in response to the budget. And there are a few things that I'm thankful for in the budget. Mainly when I think top of mind is healthcare. As I mentioned yesterday, we have 3 community groups in Annapolis that are working hard to retain and attract healthcare workers throughout Annapolis County, and all 3 groups receive their full funding ask as far as I know, so certainly appreciative of their work and that this budget has offered what they've asked for. I really was excited to see the $1.8 million announced for the new nursing program at Acadia. And, you know, nurses are so integral to our healthcare system. I come from a family of nurses and physicians, my mom, my sisters, et cetera. And I certainly know the value of what they bring to our healthcare. I'm eager to learn more about the program. So although excited about that funding, it's all about what outcomes are positive on the ground once those graduates move on and find their way into community. So just a personal story, I actually was accepted to the accelerated nursing program at Dal 10 years ago. I was excited to join my family and friends as a nurse throughout the valley, and as life goes, it didn't work out. One of the main factors was considering moving my young family from the valley to Halifax for that program, meaning my partner would have to change her job and her career. My kid, my baby at the time, would have to start a life in a new place, and I chose to pursue another career at the time. So I'm hoping that this program attracts more local students to attend Acadia for nursing, and I'm hoping that the outcomes are there and they stay in the community and help us out in healthcare. Another one that stood out as a positive for me was, I think in response of me as an agriculture critic, I think the agriculture minister actually stood up and announced the cell funding. And I've been in the legislature talking about inherently how dangerous farming is. Again, growing up on a farm and having personal stories of people suffering on the farm with different injuries. And, you know, cell service in the valley is even more critical now than it's ever been. And for thinking about our farmers, our fishermen and women, another inherently dangerous profession. But I'm also thinking about business owners, tourism and otherwise. I'm thinking about families that are desperate to have better cell service, and all through the lens of, as we lose emergency in Annapolis and emergency hours in Middleton, we certainly need cell service to be there when we need it. So was happy to see that in the budget. Lastly, certainly pleased to see the universal lunch program. I think one of the members in the House mentioned last session that Annapolis suffers from some of the highest child poverty rates in the province, and not something I'm proud of or any of us would be proud of, but far too many times, either through my kids who attend elementary or otherwise, I hear about kids and families that aren't able to afford lunch, that come hungry to school. It's heartbreaking, and I was excited to see that the government included this in the budget. Things, you know, I wish, you know, and to that point, sorry, through an agriculture lens, what I'm curious is how we're going to involve our farmers and those in the agriculture business with this universal lunch program. Certainly at home, we're surrounded by farms and producers, and I would like to see, you know, obviously as much local fresh food from them involved in these schools and involved in this program as possible. Things I wish were in the budget. I just put forward a bill to help our volunteer firefighters, and it's for their medical first responding training. So for members of the House that may not know, your volunteer firefighters have a basic cost of $250, $300 for basic training. They have a full course cost of upwards of $600. And that doesn't take into effect that in places like Annapolis, these volunteers have to travel outside the constituency for training. So they're paying for overnights at hotels. They're paying for food and travel. And so sometimes these costs for volunteers are upwards over $1,000. This bill, I hope, the government will look at, but I was disappointed that more support wasn't there for them. I would have liked to see more funding for our urgent treatment center in Annapolis. Like I mentioned, we lost our emergency room last year, and it was replaced by an urgent treatment center. We went from 7 days and nights a week for emergency coverage to 3 days a week for urgent treatment coverage. And I was hoping there was funding in the budget to make that UTC more sustainable in Annapolis. I hope the government finds a way to help our community get that urgent treatment center from 3 days a week to 5 days a week, and hopefully 7 days a week. Just quickly, I would have liked to see some help on parking fees. I've mentioned it a few times before. I still hear it quite often, where lots of people struggling with affordability. It would be an easy thing to do, where people in Annapolis pay $3 every time they visit a hospital facility. There's certainly lots of facilities in the province that are free. And people are asking me as the MLA, why can't our facility be free like other areas? So I have put a bill forward on that, I think, a previous session, but I was hoping there'd be some funding to maybe offset that. When I look at agriculture, there are some positives in the budget. Unfortunately, agriculture doesn't get the funding or the attention that I think it deserves. Certainly doesn't get the funding that other departments get. But there are some positives around Dykeland upgrades. Even in Annapolis, there's some funding to help us with Dykelands down that way. Always want more funding, but certainly wanted to highlight that. Things that I would have liked to see in the budget for agriculture that weren't there would be, for example, in fruit growers or fruit producers, I think they've asked for a long time now about bin funding. And, apple bins or bins otherwise for fruit. They find it hard to compete, and they find it hard to fund that themselves. Other provinces have involved in sustainable cap funding and millions for replant programs. There's nothing in this budget that helps our farmers and producers with replanting, and I would hope that would be in a future budget. Stakeholders, including Federation of Agriculture, farmers themselves and producers, have mentioned several times they're looking for more funding for succession planning. They're looking for more funding for mental health services. They're looking for more help for growing an agriculture growth strategy, and there didn't seem to be much funding in that on this budget. But overall, I just wanted to speak for a few minutes on there are some good things in this budget on health care that really stood out to me. I think I'm on record, at least at home and here in the legislature, fighting for health care more than anything else, and I'll continue to do so. And there were some things, as I mentioned, the nursing program, support for our local communities that stands out, but I was wishing for more support for our agriculture industry. They're more important than ever now that food security is a top of mind, affordability issues are top of mind, and I hope in future budgets agriculture is given the priority it deserves. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the honourable member for Bedford Basin.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm not going to speak at length on the budget because I've already spoken at length on the budget ad nauseum, and I'm sure that folks don't need to hear me repeat that all again. I do want to discuss a few things that are in the FMA quite briefly. There are a lot of clauses in here that allow notice of sale at public auction, etc., to be posted on a municipality's website instead of in a newspaper. There are a number of clauses throughout this. And boy, if we want to speed up the death of our local newspapers, this is how you do it. I understand why. I mean, newspapers may be disappearing as we speak. But I would have preferred to see that it be in a newspaper, if available, in the local area, if not on the website. When we stop and think about the number of newspapers that have closed up shop in this province, what's currently happening with Saltwire, much of that is driven by ad revenues, and they have lost them. I mean, since the birth of Kijiji and sites like that, that just was a kick in the teeth to newspapers. But one thing they could always count on is that the government had to advertise in there, and that's gone. And I don't think that although I know this particular government likes to control the message, I don't think they're trying to hasten the death of our newspapers. But that's the end result of what we're doing here. If you don't have to publish certain things in the newspaper, if you can put it on a website, there goes that ad revenue. And I think that, I mean, there's Joseph Howe here in the legislature presiding over our deliberations here. And I think it's kind of sad that we're going to hasten that even further. The other thing I really want to talk about today is the Personal Health Information Act, which is amended in the FMA. So again, we have a number of pieces of legislation that could have been standalone bills. The government likes to get in and get out, and I get why. Every day is another question period, except for Mondays. and with question period, there's always the opportunity for someone to screw up. And I don't think democracy is well served when we have these omnibus bills that jam a bunch of things in all together. All of these could have been dealt with. Most of these could have been dealt with in standalone bills, but we're not doing that. And so when I look at the clause of the bill that amends the Personal Health Information Act, that clause comes, it's the second last clause, basically, in this bill. There's 111 clauses, and we're just going to slip that one in at the end. And when we look at the explanatory notes that were distributed with the Act, Clause 110 amends the Personal Health Information Act to allow the Governor and Council to make regulations, and this is the part that gives me the willies, requiring personal health information to be disclosed for the purposes of planning and management of the healthcare system, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All of us have constituents who come to our office and they need assistance with the healthcare system. And we get them to sign a consent form. And I can't tell you the number who balk at the thought of people who are not their healthcare providers having access to that information. They're deeply concerned about that regularly. And I have to spend time going through why this is and why we need that consent and how I'm not going to be able to help them if they don't sign this thing. So here we have another instance where the government wants personal health information. It doesn't say anything about aggregate here. And so the concern of the doctors who are expressing it and patients who are increasingly expressing it to us is that it won't be aggregate information, it's personal health information, because that's what it says here in this explanatory note. And the government's response is that there will be regulations that will make it clear what exactly is being looked for. But the problem with regulations, as we all know in this chamber, is the devil's in the details. And we've already had our health information laid wide open for some, as my leader puts it, bad actor to see already. We've already been through that. Anybody who has worked for the province is working for the province. I mean, it was the biggest data breach in history. And for folks who were trying to sign up for the electronic monitoring of their bank accounts, it was not an easy process. And that's why they've had so little uptake, I'm convinced. Because if you've ever changed your name, then you have to go through extra hoops. You try to sign up for it, and it doesn't happen. So if you've been married, if you're a woman and you've been married and you've changed your name, I guess if you're a man, you could change your name too, but it doesn't happen very often. You have to go through the extra hoops. And that's when people are getting hung up. So they're not getting that protection. So while the minister stands up and pats himself on the back to the response, there's a whole ton of people who've been left out of that response because they couldn't get that company to recognize their credentials. And I had one case where every time a woman logged on to try to do it, she began getting fraud calls every single time. And I said, I think your Hotmail account is compromised. I would suggest you get a Gmail address. So people are not exactly, overjoyed at having the government have access to their health information. And you can understand why, because every time we turn around, you're getting a new Visa card because your Visa card information's been accessed by somebody who shouldn't have it. So People are very wary of this. I have grave concerns about this, and we know that governments don't have a good track record on keeping personal information personal. It happened to us. It happened to this government. The difference is theirs was found quickly because I think it was a ransom that was asked for. The other one was not. And we didn't ask for their minister to resign, even though it was a huge, huge, massive breach. Instead, those were the folks that went after the minister who wasn't even the minister when it happened and demanded she resign. And so you can understand why Nova Scotians are reluctant to have this shared. And when I looked, Doctors Nova Scotia is not super wild about it either. And it made me sort of stop and think about the fact that doctors would have to share this information. And you know, we've been hearing a lot of talk about red tape reduction for doctors. Is this something more they're going to have to share? So we have some questions here. Doctors don't like it. The president of Doctors Nova Scotia says the way the legislation is written is quite broad, and it's not entirely clear the information they might be accessing. The second last clause in the 35-page bill says there is an additional obligation for doctors and other healthcare providers to, quote, to disclose personal health information to the minister or a person acting on behalf of the minister for the purposes of planning and management of the health system, resource allocation, and creating or maintaining the electronic health record programs and services. There's nothing there about aggregate information. And I think we can all understand that people are concerned about the broad nature of the legislation. And there's a solution here. The government can modify this proposed law and tighten up the wording. And that's what Doctors Nova Scotia would like to see. I don't think this is an outrageous ask. And I really want to clarify, what is the obligation on doctors? What do they have to share? Is this going to be another obligation that doctors have at the end of the day to have to do? How is this going to work? Will it be automated? But we know that the government has access to billing codes. They have information on what kinds of things people are coming in for help with. So we don't really understand why this is a necessary piece to this bill. I've shared my previous thoughts, as I've said, on the budget. There are some good things in the budget, much of which colleagues on this side of the House have proposed. But there are some concerning things which I've already shared, and these things, particularly this clause, the fact that we are hastening the demise of newspapers, and the fact that Nova Scotians' personal health information will be required to be shared with the Minister of Health or their designate is of concern to me, and it's of concern to Doctors Nova Scotia and to many patients too. Thank you.
I recognize the honourable member for Clayton Park West.
Madam Speaker, I would like to add my voice as well and speak to the the budget, to the FMA. There are two things that I'm going to focus on. I'd like to echo the voices of my leader, the member from Yarmouth and the member for Cumberland North who spoke, her husband is a doctor and knows, but I've also received 2 letters, 2 emails, and one of them is a constituent that I really care about, and he is so upset. And a lot of what was said by here today, he has mentioned as well. But he made a really good point, and he said that he feels that this government is fighting family doctors, and no wonder we are not getting anybody going into family practice. Honestly, that was his words, and that we are going to see even more with this legislation because the relationship between the doctor and the patient is sacred, and that information is only to be given to the patient and to the doctor, not to the minister, not to the staff. He sees that as a power grab. That was his words in his email to me, and I feel very strongly against having that information or my information as a patient to go to the department or to the minister. So I just wanted to add that, and then I will move on to what is really what I spoke about the other day, and it is very, very important to me, and I just want to tell people that since March 6th, that the Toronto Star, the Chronicle Herald, the Canadian Press, the Radio Francophonie, News 95.7, CBC, the Examiner, and Global News have all spoke about or did articles about the dense breast bill that I introduced on March 6th, and there is a reason why that many media would cover that, because it makes sense. It is wrong what we're doing in Nova Scotia, and I will speak until I don't know, until I have no voice left to save other women from going through what I went through. It is wrong what we're doing to women in Nova Scotia, and dense breast does affect 50% of women in Nova Scotia. That's a high number. 40% of that 50%, their mammogram will miss their cancer, and they will go through. And I have a letter from this woman from Wolfville who sent me, and I didn't have a chance to read it, but please listen. A lot of this happened to me and to the 70 women who showed up on March 6th. And she wrote this letter to the minister, so the minister has this letter. To my therapist, there is no dignity in this. The therapist said, no, there is only dignity in the way you handle it. I have stage 3 breast cancer and dense breast C. My initial cancer diagnosis was December 2nd, 2022, and I am still undergoing treatment. It will be over a year and a half from diagnosis to being done. I was dignified when I defecated my pants while walking around the block. I was dignified when I was eventually hospitalized because of therapy-induced colitis, now potentially a lifelong condition. I was dignified while I lost my hair, had both diarrhea and constipation, had chemo veins, vomiting, no sleep, peeling skin, and night sweats. All reactions to the massive amounts of toxins and drugs going through my body. I was dignified throughout multiple biopsies, a needle injecting dye around my nipple 4 times, and 2 surgeries, a mastectomy and initial lymph node removal, and then subsequent radical lymph node dissection. I was dignified the first time I looked at my disfigured body where I used to have breasts. I'm dignified in the face of potential lymphedema, chronic shoulder pain, and the complications of abnormal lymph nodes. I'm still dignified as I await radiation therapy and continued chemotherapy. I'm still dignified as I await second mastectomy, as it wasn't protocol to do them together. And as I await at least five-year time span for a breast construction, I have told myself, I can do this, but at what cost and why? Why do I have to go through this? The cancer could have been detected if the screening process worked. By the time I detected my cancer, it was already metastasized or spread. Even the invasive mammogram after I discovered it was negative. Now I find myself feeling undignified and quite angry at the social and economic cost to my life, my family, and the health system. The investment into lab technicians, training and salaries certainly offsets the economics associated with the amount of time, medical professionals, costly medications, and drain on the MSI and the Nova Scotia health system. On top of that is the loss of my salary, the additional expenses I bear for travel, medications, hair coverings, prosthesis, physiotherapy, and mental health support not covered by the healthcare system. And yes, the dignity of it all. Why does the Nova Scotia government feel a letter indicating that I have dense breasts relieve them of responsibility and liability? Other provinces and other countries have seen fit to fund additional screening beyond a mammogram and a letter. Why is my sister's life in a different province more precious than mine in Nova Scotia? And I said the same about my sister, who gets an abbreviated MRI, but I don't get it here, even though I'm the one who has cancer. Why does Nova Scotia government disbelieve the scientific evidence and data above the importance of additional screening for women with dense breasts? In the face of overwhelming evidence, I urge you to vote for additional breast screening for women with dense breasts. Sincerely, L. Spigel, Wolfville, Nova Scotia. When I read that letter, it really she described it so much better than I can. There is no dignity in the treatments that I received and all these women that were here in the legislature. It is horrific. It is barbaric, and it is very difficult, and it can cost so much more than the screening itself. And it's been proven by other provinces that we actually save money. Treatment of, because my cancer wasn't found in stage 1, like my other colleague in this house, the cost to the government would be between $150,000 to $200,000 just for the mastectomy and 4 sessions of chemo. In other cases where it's found as stage 4, we're looking at $400,000 to $500,000. The machine that BC is using, it's called contrast-enhanced mammography, is actually $100,000. And all they're doing is retraining those same mammogram technicians on using the new technology. That's all it takes. But we're saying no. Let's wait. Let's wait and give them harsh treatment, and let's cost more money to the government. Why not? Why not? It is just unbelievable, and that's why the media is picking this up, saying it does not make sense. It does not make sense financially. And somebody, I submitted very similar, and I asked for ultrasound in October, the day before my last chemo. So you've had time to look at this. You've had time to check with the department. Why is Nova Scotia behind? That same day, my oncologist said to me, Rafa, if you're going to fight for something, don't fight for ultrasound. Ultrasound missed my first lump. In February 2022, I had a lump, and I had a mammogram and ultrasound, and it said clear as can be. 6 months later, I have another lump. Now it's 95% malignant. How is that possible? on the same breast. That means the first mammogram and ultrasound missed it. And many women with dense C and D, the mammogram will miss it. And ultrasound increases, but it doesn't do as well as abbreviated mammogram, abbreviated MRI, which what Ontario is giving women, and my sister, and this woman's sister, but we don't get it here. We are denied. The only province that denies extra screening, even if you have cancer. Imagine that, guys. This is the province where we're living in. And there is that means your sisters, your daughters, your mothers are at the same risk as I was. And there's so many of us. Please go check what density you are. Because when they gave me the density, I didn't take it seriously. I had no clue what that really meant and how serious that was until I had to go through this hell. I have no other description but hell for a year of all these treatments and the dignity of it and how well this woman has described it to me. We need to do something, especially the women here, but the men more. Your daughters, your wives. Even men can have breast cancer. And we know that from somebody here in this house who his brother has passed away because of breast cancer as a male. It is serious. I plea and beg, we should not wait on this. We've already have heard so many other women and put them through this. And we can stop this, and it is available, and other provinces have done it. We do not need to reinvent the wheel. Listen to the experts. One expert here has a different idea, but other experts across Canada have moved on from mortality. Our expert in Nova Scotia is basing her decision on mortality. And to do the studies until I die, and all these women until they die, to prove that extra screening would have helped, will take a long time. And should we wait for that? I've spoken to so many women who are struggling, or 3 women from actually government workers who haven't worked for 3 years, 2 years, 3 years. The woman who spoke at the press conference is working part-time because these treatments are difficult and take a lot out of you. But I'm a fighter, and I will be there until this bill is passed and until I can save other women from the hell that I went through. And I need you to help me. I'm begging you to help me and listen. There is enough articles. I told you how many medias have spoken about this, wrote about this. Just check it out. Just put dense breast or rough or Find It Early Act. I just listened to another broadcast that is happening in the States. The same thing. Many states have increased screening for their women and allowing the insurance companies to cover it. We must do this. This is less expensive than the hell we're putting women. It will save taxpayers money.
Order.
But life.
Order.
Sorry.
Excuse me. I just want to remind the member to speak through the chair and to focus on the FMA. It's a very passionate speech, but I have to rule that there's nothing in the FMA directly related to the conversation. So thank you. I recognize the honourable member for Clayton Park West.
I'm sorry, Madam Speaker, and I am very passionate, and I will, but there is a lot about the money. The FMA is about our budget, and this will save not only the hell that I went through, but money for the government. So that is an FMA, and we can add it to our costs, and this should have been looked at last year, not now, last year. I gave you what I knew, but I was going through a hard time at the time. And I've learned so much more since last October. And the cost is one of them. So look at it. This is serious, and we need to do something about it and stop putting women through the hell that I went through. And thank you.
Seeing that there are no more speakers, is the House ready for the question? The The motion is to move second reading of Bill number 419, the Financial Measures Act. Would all those in favor of the motion please say aye? Aye. Contrary minded, nay. Did I hear a nay? I recognize, okay. The motion is carried.
Bill 419, an act respecting certain financial and other government measures.
I now recognize the that the bill be put towards law and amendments. Thank you. I recognize the Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. That concludes government business for the day. I move that the House do now rise to meet again on Monday, March 25th, between the hours of 4 p.m. and 9 p.m. Government business will include Committee of the Whole House on bills, and law amendments will be 10 to 3 on Monday, March 25th.
The motion is that the House rise to meet again on March 25th between the hours of 4 and 9 p.m. Would all those in favor of the motion please say aye? Aye. Contrary minded, nay. The motion is carried. We stand adjourned until March 25th between the hours of 4 and 9 p.m. Thank you.